32 minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations. I am Spaceboy.
And I'm Surlana.
And it is Spaceboy Universe time. Yay! It is November 28, is it? I can't tell on this light. 26, actually. 2016. And tonight's lucky guest is Ritch Shydner, the comedian extraordinaire, and we'll be taking his call at the bottom of the hour. As always, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at the SBU Universe. Follow Surlana at Surlana. You can follow me at Spaceboy at Spaceboy Universe. Remember to hashtag your tweets at hashtag SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. And want to hang out with the Space Cadets, by the way? You can do so by going to spaceboyuniverse.com, click the dancing chat bubble, and in the player you can get in with all the cool kids. By the way, Surlana, I can hear you clicking on the other side.
Sorry.
In addition to Twitter, you can find the universe on Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Just look for Spaceboy Universe. Speaking of YouTube, you can find more than the Spaceboy Universe of archive of shows. There is video content from Spaceboy music, video interviews, 2-bit gamers, and so much more. Say, can't catch the show live? Well, no problem. The SBU on the go is the way to go. So go to via Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iTunes. And as always, we love to broadcast. And on that magical note, how are you, Surlana?
Sorry, I'm a little flustered.
Did we figure out who was trying to call at the...
I'm still working on it. Someone says your mic is running hot.
I'm always running hot. I don't understand. Let's see here. I backed it off a little bit. Tell me if that sounds a little bit better.
Okay.
So I'll continue to talk here until somebody tells me that I'm not as hot as I used to be. And I know that just cracks you up immensely. So anyway, and as Surlana's still trying to try to do math while we're doing the show. Okay, audio sounds odd. Yes, I know. I don't know what to say right now other than it says, yeah, that good. Spaceboy James says that. Much better. Thanks, you.
James. Thanks, sis.
Yeah, so that is okay. Well, we'll roll with it. So, I guess we're so glad to be back after the Thanksgiving special we did this past Thursday, where we did a special SBU/SBM. Man, those clicks are loud.
This is not the quiet mouse. We need to get a second quiet mouse now.
Okay. So, yeah, that clickety-click thing, I mean,
I'll try to keep it to a minimum.
Have you figured out what's going on? And, it's kind of hard to do a show without you. And
I'm sorry I gotta say this. All right. That was not professional. You're right.
So, audience, how is Surlana's voice? Is she coming in okay on that end? Because we had to do, you have to talk.
Sorry, I've got to untangle these wires because they got tangled up. All right. Sorry. There we go.
So
now I'm ready to start the show.
Okay. All right. So where do we start?
Get my head back. You can't get my headphones working. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's banter time.
You do know how the show works, right?
Yeah.
So
Bob says I'm a little hot. Well, thank you, Bob.
I thought you sounded a little hot too, but here, let me dial that back a little bit. But you have to talk into the mic so that they can actually hear you.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So how's that? Is Surlana better? And I know it sounds like we're fumbling the football right now. Things that we should have done before the show started, like put chords where they needed to be and all that. Did you ever figure out who called?
I'm working on that now, but I'm trying not to do too much
Click?
clicks.
You know, and this is the magic of live broadcast. You couldn't send out a text or something like that, or a tweet, or I mean,
just go ahead.
Yeah, but this isn't involved. This is the part people tune into. Is the best part of the show is when we go back and forth and fight. You know, it's like Mortal Kombat. Test your might. Get over here. Anyway, so she sounds fine. Thank you, sis. You know, you sound fine. I sound fine. Finally, I think we dialed it in. And all these good people have been waiting to listen to both of us on Saturday night. You know, so.
Well, then start it.
All right. Well, don't you have a topic to start with? Or, I mean.
Well, you always start.
Okay, so I start.
For heaven's sakes.
One, you know, I've been doing Netflix, you know, binge watching again. And so my binge watch I've been doing is The Crown, which is about the, you know, Queen Elizabeth II.
Yes.
And it's been quite interesting because, you know, one, I love history, but, you know, I'm not saying this is a historical reenactment exactly per se, because I'm sure they take some liberties as far as when they do the show. But it's just, it's been interesting to see the characters in this way. Learning about Prince Philip, Princess Margaret, the king, his brother, all sorts of good stuff there. And you know, as I'm looking over at you, is that person that called or?
Mm-hmm. I'm working on it. I'm fixing it.
Oh, okay, good. So
you go for it.
Well, I'm talking about this, and this is a good topic because you know you love.
I am thrilled, and I'm so proud of you. You're watching something docudrama historical.
Well, that's not the first one I've seen. I saw the one about Pablo Escobar, and I can't think of the name of that one that was on Netflix, but that was pretty good. But this one about the Queen has been most excellent and has piqued my interest in history and all that good stuff. And I know that you have a love for the British in many aspects. Well, I mean, I'd have to say I do too, but in this context, it's been about history, learning about the Queen and you know, and Prince Philip, and you know, it's just the dynamics, you know, because she took on the role of the Queen, and kind of like, you know, Prince Albert, not Prince Albert. No, that's a different thing altogether. Prince Philip really felt like, you know, he didn't have a role with her. He had this idea that they'd be like a partnership, and I guess he kind of got iced out on it, and then he started doing this partying and stuff off to the side, and I guess the Queen started worrying that he was in an affair outside of their relationship, and one end, you can't really blame him in the sense of not necessarily having an affair, if he did or not. I haven't gotten to that point in the show. Is that you know, the fact that, you know, here she was spending all this time doing her duty for the country, and just really didn't have time for him. And so, and then of course Margaret following in the steps of her uncle. You know, being in love with a commoner kind of thing, and so. And
then her uncle in love with a commoner, and her a 3-time divorcee. That was big scandal back then, and it's like everything was sort of falling apart as far as, you know, you keep it in the family, you marry for wealth, power, and title, and you keep it all in the family, and they weren't ready quite to let go of that at that time, and but that's when the modern era of thinking started to creep in, and they had to, start marrying commoners, even though those were hand-picked commoners.
What about Di?
I think Diana was handpicked, but led to believe that Charles actually cared for her and had feelings. And then once she got married and got pregnant, the scales fell off of her eyes. And I think then it became a true arranged marriage, and she managed to get out. And then tragedy happened.
But it's the first season is out there on Netflix. It's called The Crown. Very interesting show. Very well done. Very well put together. A surprise actor in this show has been Churchill, who's been being played by John Lithgow. And he, as always, the man is a great actor and plays Churchill really good. And you should check it out on Netflix. Let's see what else we got on. Rogue One, the last trailer before it actually premieres in, a couple of weeks, is out.
It's the 17th, I think.
The 17th? I thought it was the 16th. Anyway, the
16th, 17th.
Rogue One. You've seen the previews for this, right? For Rogue One? And
yeah, but maybe only one time, because I'm like, Star Wars, whatever.
Well, I know. The last one I've seen, the most recent trailer, looks very awesome. I can't wait to go see it. It has the music. It has Darth Vader in it. I mean, it's going to have, just different elements leading up to the Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And so that should be good. So I'm looking forward to that. It's very exciting, and I know a lot of people are nerding out there for the coming of this particular movie, and it's all good in the neighborhood. So
they're mentioning Arrival in the chat, and we did see that on Thanksgiving Day, but we're waiting to talk about it with Patrick Spohr.
Well, we could talk a little bit about it.
And by then, it will have been out long enough that if we do spoilers, it's your own fault.
For those who are listening and are in our Spreaker chat, how many of those have seen the movie already? I'm just curious to know.
Arrival, he's talking about.
Arrival. It's one of those movies that, when you leave,
I had to think about it for 5 minutes.
You leave kind of somber. It's not like, oh man, that was an awesome movie.
I had to go, okay, what just happened? And then I had to think about oh, okay, now I get it.
Actually, when we were leaving, you were very quiet, and I don't know if it was just.
I was trying to figure it out.
Okay, because
I was trying to figure out what the timeline and all that stuff was. I was like, oh, okay, remember she said this, and that was a clue. So okay, now I get it.
Yeah. So. It was a pretty good movie, and like I said, don't expect. It's not. I mean, it's got aliens in it in the movie. It's interesting how you have to. They bring in this linguistic. My tongue is tied.
Language expert.
Thank you very much. And so she has to decipher their language, but really, what it comes down to is that she can't verbally decipher their language. She has to do it a different way, but she ends up figuring it out, and it's just really interesting. So we'll be talking more about this movie with Patrick Spohr because I know that he saw it and he found it very interesting and wants to talk to us about it as well. And we have to listen to what Patrick says. Because he's the man when it comes to certain things like this. So he'll give us his report on it, and we'll tell him our perspective about it, and it should be good. And Patrick should be on December 10th.
Yeah. Oh, and we got to get our homework, assignments, and get ready and we got to get really focused because he'll run us over.
Yeah, he's the kind that quizzes you if you haven't been doing your homework, and so that's why it was important when we reached out to him.
After he verbally spanked us the first time.
It's important to establish that, Patrick, what are we going to be talking about? What is it you want to focus on? Because if you go in blind and you haven't read any of his emails or anything,
he lets you know, and in a nice way, but it feels like you've disappointed your father or your favorite uncle or something.
All right, but yeah, that's going to be on the 10th, and that should be good. Now, I'm looking forward to our next week's topic, and that's going to be over David Bowie. and which is kind of way overdue because we had planned on doing David Bowie, I guess right before August, I believe, and just things, cosmic lining of the stars and everything changed, and so but now we're going to do it on the 3rd, and so the life and times of David Bowie.
Yes. That I'm assuming you would like for that to be a call-in show.
I'm really impressed how you keep looking over there and not talking during the show, and then all of a sudden you look over there and it's like you run me over like a freight train.
Okay, you're going to have to just pick one. Either I don't talk or I'm just doing it at my own pace.
I want you to talk. I want you to
You can't have it all.
Well, I try.
I'm sure your next wife will be an excellent producer.
All righty then. So anyway, I've said a few topics. What do you got over there for banter?
Well, it's two of this kind of the same thing. Somebody caught video footage, or I'm not really sure how this happened, of supposedly, allegedly, possibly hundreds of UFOs captured leaving the moon's surface at the same time by a conspiracy theorist. So, let me see what they said about that. Of course, this is from a video shared by a person called Mr. Enigma. It claims to have spotted hundreds of UFOs leaving the moon's surface at the same time. Now, the origin is not known, but it shows the moon's surface with countless spaceships taking off at once. But, of course, this could be faked easily, with any of the consumer video programs and render programs we have out there. So, but the video is later backed up by this Mr. Enigma. Oh, it was a woman that uploaded this. He backed it up and saying, the amazing video uploaded to YouTube on November 13th by Jerry Vigil. Alleged UFOs can be seen leaving the moon. It's like as though there could be hundreds of them, but the jury's still out on whether this is some kind of optical illusion. Maybe. Because UFOs are not what you're seeing. It's a phenomenon seen anytime you look at the moon's edge.
Okay.
So I have lots of telescope time. You see this all the time. It's called chromatic aberration. Google it. You see it more when the lens is out of focus as well, as such in this video. Another viewer said that it's just dust on the lens. The moon moves. The dust changes from bright moon to dark background. Clean your stuff. So...
Well, and also I don't hear something mentioned where you have the atmospheric interference of the light waves coming from the moon to the telescope. I mean, the atmosphere can really do a number on what you look at in the sky. So depending on what kind of telescope you have, I mean, even the highest powered telescopes will get some interference, and that's why they try to put telescopes on top of mountains like in Hawaii. They also, I think it's the one in Hawaii where they develop an optics where it compensates for this atmospheric.
I think that could easily be mistaken for UFOs leaving, because I mean, if that were true, surely more than one person would have said something about that.
And I don't know about you, but I've got floaters in my eyes. So
oh my gosh, mine are so bad.
I'm not looking at the moon at times, but I'm like just looking around. I said, "Was that a bug? That was a huge bug."
I can see things that aren't there.
So yeah, I can imagine that. Is it a floater in their eye, or so atmospheric? And I hate to sound like the old UFO files of swamp gas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you gonna cough? Now, well, in that same vein, you could say this too. They've also spotted a mystery sphere zooming past the sun, and it was captured by NASA satellites, sparking more theories over UFOs.
And that's another thing, is that we see so many of these videos like UFOs at the sun, just at the corner, and could it be? I sound like I'm being the devil's advocate here, but it's almost like solar flare. Oh, that was a solar flare, but people are saying, oh no, that was a UFO ejecting some kind of plasma discharge, and
right, exactly. It's saying UFO hunter perked up when NASA satellites appeared to capture a huge unidentified object during its mission to observe the sun, UFO Mania channel posted a video made from images taken by NASA's stereo satellites that show a large sphere passing ahead. Frames in the series do not feature the sun-like sphere, nor does any image from October's captures from the mission. So 2 stereo craft were launched 10 years ago to take images of the sun from the opposing sides to allow solar phenomenon like coronal mass ejections to be better observed. So I'm wondering if that's what this could be. But do mass ejections, are they ever perfectly straight?
True. This goes back to some of those UFO-related items that the space shuttle has observed going at right angles. I mean, those defy gravity and physics altogether.
Still images were posted from this video, and they're believed to be craft called the blue spheres. And you could see like the streaks coming out from these spheres, and they're very bright, and they're look to be moving independently from each other because they're not like in line with each other. She said the object, which kind of resembles the sun itself, with small apparent flares or roiling surface, should not be feared. No scientific expert could be found to back up these claims.
Yeah. It's you make the call on this one, fake or crap.
Now, I am reading from the Daily Mirror's Weird News section, so I don't know if that taints your perspective right there.
Well, continue on with the weird science news. On Thursday. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thursday, we were talking about Stephen Hawking and sending signals out into space.
We were getting kind of pissed off at Stephen Hawking.
Well, here you got to question the man because in this recent article that I've also read, he was saying that mankind only has about 1,000 years left here on Earth, and it's a necessity that we move out into the cosmos and colonize planets and all that.
But don't talk to any aliens. On the way.
Don't talk to any aliens.
Stay away from the weird neighborhood, I guess.
So when aliens offer you candy, don't take candy from aliens. It's code for strangers. So that's important. So I don't know if Stephen has reached that time where he should retire or what, but please make up your mind.
Well, we were talking about, so he's saying we have 1,000 years left and we should go out there, but he said don't mess with aliens, so he wants us to go out there, but so did he change his position on aliens? Or
yeah, it's like you're going to throw yourself in the middle of the alien pit, and
or did he not, did he retract that statement, or did he just gloss over it, or is he losing his marbles?
I don't know. It's a mystery to me, but I just think it's funny that the one guy says, don't send signals, and then on the other hand...
You're asking for trouble.
You're actually sending signals by putting yourself out there, and it's pretty funny.
I think they could probably, if they're out there, they can detect we've been there, even if we don't send signals, because there's just so much crap around the Earth, and...
Well, we're generating so many different signals, and in fact,
and things are leaking out into space, right? Whether we're sending them or not, right?
We've been broadcasting since the late 30s.
Because if we broadcast to a satellite and back, sure, it hits a satellite, but doesn't something keep going on past?
Radio waves continue on out into the universe, and so, it's amazing what is out there. So. To say we haven't been heard from would be pretty ridiculous by any standard of the imagination when that is with that is concerned.
I don't know what to make of Hawking. Did somebody get to him like they got to Carl Sagan? That's what makes me wonder. Or maybe he's just like, yeah, stay away from aliens, go out in the universe, but just keep your doors locked? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I think it's a little too late about the universe in general, and hopefully at some point we'll get out into space if you don't believe in the secret space program, or maybe we're already out there and it's like Stargate Universe, and Stargate Atlantis and Stargate SG-1 were out there cruising around doing battles with the aliens that are out there. Take your pick. The choices are yours. It's just about what you're willing to feel is really cool and fantastic to listen and read to.
Okay.
So I don't know. We got about 5 more minutes on the clock there, Surlana. Are we okay there?
Well, I just like reading crazy stories. Those were just 2 I know that would appeal to some of our listeners, and I love looking at British sites. Okay.
Well,
you want to go ahead and take the break now?
Well, yeah, let's go ahead and take the break because our caller is on
Yep.
the air, and so that'll give us a chance to bring him in. So you are listening to SpaceboyUniverse.com. I am Spaceboy, that is Surlana, and we make up the universe.
I'm from another planet.
Mark your calendars. The Houston Mini Maker Faire will be at the George R. Brown Convention Center for a 2-day event on November 12th and 13th. Come join them and be a part of their growth story as they boost invention and creativity through the greater Houston area by developing a world-class exhibition. Stay tuned to the official Houston Mini Maker Faire website at www.houstonmakerfair.com to hear more insights about content, schedule, tickets, and maker exhibitor registration.
Hello Space Cadets. It is announcer Savannah. I want to tell you that as a dedicated member of the SBU team, you always want to look your best. Do it in a Spaceboy Universe t-shirt. Get yours at spaceboyuniverse.com by clicking the banner on the website.
This is author Jordan Root. You are listening to the Spaceboy Universe.
This is K28, and I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hi, y'all. This is Lori calling from Texas, and I love listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hey, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
This is Wendy. I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe. Hey, y'all. This is Lorelai DeLille. I listen to Spaceboy Universe. Don't you? Tell your mom and them I said hi.
The epic battle begins this Friday. Direct from ringside at Laser Death Melt and Bot vs. Bot in Galaxy's 2-ton weight championship, where your challenger, Good Bot, will face the reigning champion, Bad Bot. You're terminated. Reserve seating starting at $30. 2-drink minimum, where ladies don't get in free. This is an SBU production. You're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Explore the universe, spaceboyuniverse.com. Spaceboy. And Surlana. Spaceboy and Surlana. Spaceboy and Surlana. Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana on spaceboyuniverse.com.
Hey, Surlana!
What?
If Spaceboy Universe was cheese, would you eat it? Come on now, it's a simple question.
Maybe.
SpaceboyUniverse.com. Techno, dance, atmospheric moods? Yes, my friends. My latest release, Digital, has something for everyone. Even makes a great gift for Grandma. Buy your digital download at SpaceboyMusic.com.
Greetings, Space Cadets. Let's see what's in the sky tonight in the Spaceboy Universe. Tonight, in the eastern sky, we have Spaceboy Universe rising above the horizon in glorious splendor. And in the west, we can see Surlanus Majoris, which is visible at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, just below the K28 belt. So keep your eyes on the sky and listen to Spaceboy Universe.
Greetings everyone. You can catch Spaceboy Universe on every Saturday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. However, we know that you might not be able to catch the live show. That is why we have many places to listen to it on demand, like iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube and Spreaker. So take the universe with you wherever you go.
To call in, dial area code 713-701-5214. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
As always,
coffee houses around town.
As always, our breaks are always interesting. But Surlana, you want to start this off?
Sorry, we have a bad habit of talking to our guests during breaks, and that's where all the good stuff is. All right. In the 1980s, Ritch made numerous appearances on TV, including Late Night with David Letterman and Tonight Show, both with Johnny Carson and Jay Leno. He did a HBO half-hour special, One Night Stand. He played Al Bundy's co-worker on Married with Children and made guest appearances on many other TV shows such as Designing Women and Roseanne. He appeared in Steve Martin's Roxanne and Eddie Murphy's Beverly Hills Cop 2. Ritch wrote for sitcoms such as Roseanne, The Jeff Foxworthy Show, and HBO's Mind of the Married Man. He wrote material for Jeff Foxworthy's Grammy-nominated albums Totally Committed and Big Fun. He also wrote for Ron White, Jay Leno, and in 2006, Ritch co-authored a book of stand-up called I Killed. In 2010, Ritch produced and performed in an award-winning documentary on the world of stand-up comedy, I Am Comic. Currently, Ritch is writing a movie adaptation of for HBO for Bill Maher's book, True Story. Ritch has a book out right now we're going to talk about called Kicking Through the Ashes, about his time in stand-up comedy during the 1980s, during the boom of stand-up comedy. And we are thrilled to have you here tonight, Ritch.
Thank you, Surlana. Thank you.
And we were telling him before we brought him in that I remember your 1990s One Night Stand special, and of course you've got it, on YouTube, and I rewatched some of it, and some of it's aged pretty well because you talk about fundamental topics such as relationships and marriage and the differences between men and women. And in your book, you say most stand-up doesn't travel well, and comedy ages faster than music. So I think that's kind of a tribute to your cleverness that some of it has aged well.
Yeah, if you keep those subjects on men and women, it's pretty timeless. I have these joke books from the 19th century. One of them is as old as 1835, and I go through it, and the jokes about men and women are pretty much the same as they are today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the relationship dynamics aren't that different. The basics, anyway.
I just thought that was fascinating how some things do age and some things don't, because if you talk about current events, you'll get lost.
Yeah, comedy's based on so many colloquialisms or references, and I mean, if you're doing pop references from, you're doing a Gilligan's Island reference TV show from the 70s or whatever it was, 60s, I can't even remember. If you're doing that in front of a crowd today, they're kind of like, what are you talking about? But so a lot of comedy's based on topical material or references or colloquialisms of the day or the way you speak. So yeah, it gets cued into an era. It gets tied to an era.
That's kind of like how we approach our show. Being married, we bring our marital angst into the show, and
I think people find that amusing.
And so that's our comedy gold right there.
We almost had a fight just before you got on. We didn't mean to, but
that's good. That's good. Well, you're still at the age where you can make up. When you get older, you don't have that release valve that sex is. Which is like the Etch-a-Sketch where you turn it upside down and just shake it and clear it and start over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I told him, maybe his next wife will be an excellent web producer. So. Now, I believe we saw I Am Comic on Netflix. Is that about your trying to make the comeback?
It wasn't originally supposed to be about that. Jordan Brady, the director, came to me because of the book I Killed, which was Road Stories of Comic. And he said, I like that book. I want to do something about stand-up comedy. I said, well, I don't want to do just a stand-up comedy documentary about road stories, but I would love to do something about what it takes to be a stand-up comic and what the personality of a stand-up comic is.
Mm-hmm.
He said, great, let's do it. So we started doing the documentary, interviewing comics, and trying to find a direction. And during that, I had not been doing stand-up for a long time, and I'd not been in the stand-up comedy clubs. And all of a sudden, we're in there, we're watching comics night after night, and Jordan just saw this look on my face. It's sort of like, you know, that kind of, God, I don't know about it. I'd like to get up there and try that again or something. I don't know what he saw. He saw it and said, hey, you want to go try it again? And then I just pointed the camera at me, and I started trying to do stand-up again. And that's what it became.
Mm-hmm. Well, we enjoyed that. Unfortunately, it's gone off of Netflix, but I was like, hey, I remember this guy. I was trying to, I know I can place him. So, but what struck me about your book, Kicking Through the Ashes, at the beginning was your encyclopedic knowledge of early stand-up. You've got the cities, the club names, who was regularly performing there, and, you know, maybe what they did their bits about. And that must have been, you either had a tremendous memory or you've had a tremendous effort getting your research together.
No, it was a tremendous, the memory of my stories and the things that happened to me was pretty much intact. And I had notes and over the years and notebooks and joke books with things in it, but all that sort of stuff. I called comics who were in Chicago, who performed in the 70s in Chicago, part of that scene. I called the comics in Boston, Barry Crimmins. I called guys in Houston for that scene that was down there in the 70s at the Comedy Workshop. And so I called people to get information. You know, I mean, I just called a lot of people to get that information, to research those scenes. I was not part of the scenes. I was not in San Francisco in the 70s. So I called comics to get information, people who were. So I did the research. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I was thinking there going, how does this guy, he must have, like I said, made a lot of phone calls, but it's like, this is pretty comprehensive. I don't know of any other one that's this comprehensive.
Yeah, I didn't just call one guy and take his word from him. I called a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. And so I got information from a lot of people, and then the things that conflicted, I called back to other people to find out where the conflict was and maybe resolve it. And other times I just went, okay, if it's all everybody's agreement, then this must have been a fact.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons I've always wanted to talk to a stand-up comedian, because what fascinates me is this need. It's almost like needing a drug. It seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, that you have this need to get a laugh at all costs. And it seems like to me, if you broke your leg on the stage and you got a laugh, you'd come back, break the next one to get the second laugh. Yeah. It seems to sustain you.
Comics look at it that way. I remember once I broke my leg in a motorcycle accident from the Comedy Magic Club down in Hermosa Beach. So I'm laying in the street, the motorcycle's still on its side and running. People heard the accident come running out of the club. Jay Leno was amongst them. He runs over, he goes, Shydner, you got 5 new minutes coming up here. I mean, he just looked, you got a broken leg. I mean, you're going to get more material out of having a broken leg. That's the way comics look at it. Mm-hmm. It's just like more material, more something else to get a laugh about. You're right, it's a drug. For people who are truly comics, we have to hear it. I have to hear it. It gives me at least as much pleasure and joy as it does anybody in the audience when I hear them laughing. It makes me calm. It puts me in the moment. I'm never in the moment like that. I'm never where I'm not fearing the future or regretting the past. When I'm up there doing stand-up comedy, I'm totally in the moment. And that's like, as I put in the book, that's a drug worth killing for. I mean, for us, that's, you know, look, everybody who started doing this, you read the book, when I first went up there the first time, I did 5 minutes, I got one guy went, huh, that's all he did. Like one kind of, not even a full laugh, just got, huh, and that was enough to make me try it again.
So I imagine it brings a certain validation, is what you're saying, to what you do, and with that, it's like I look at it as the battery. You know, when you're getting people laugh and clap, and it's charging you up. It's charging you up, and the more you're able to go the distance.
Oh yeah, it's adrenaline. You come off stage, you can't sleep for hours. It's adrenaline. I now chased that high for a long time. You come off stage really high, so it's like, what can I do to keep this high going? So you got drugs, you got alcohol, you got chasing women, you got a lot of different highs that you chase. At least I've chased that stage high to try to keep it going. It's hard to decompress. It's hard to come down from that high. I mean, I had to learn how to do it, obviously, and I did. But it's something you want to keep going. And the comics don't fall asleep right away after you get off stage. That's for sure.
Yeah, because you're probably too amped for a while.
Totally.
Well, I was interested. I was reading your book, and of course, this book I mentioned to you earlier by Nadal Sater, I'm Dying Up Here. I was wondering what was going on at the time in the early 80s, 1980, that seemed like America just had this thirst for stand-up comedy. We needed to laugh.
It exploded. I mean, you just saw my book. Mm-hmm. At the time, there weren't any paying clubs. I started watching in D.C. There weren't paying clubs. And so in 1976, Mitzi Shore opened up the Comedy Store in La Jolla Beach, which was paying comics to perform there, mostly from her Comedy Store in Los Angeles, right? That's in San Diego. So then they opened up a club in the Laugh Stop in Newport Beach. These were all California. Then the Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa Beach, all California. So there are no other comedy clubs. This is 76, 77, and 78. So 78, there are no other comedy clubs, paying comedy clubs. There are showcase clubs in New York and L.A., which were just, you go and perform and you don't get any money, but you get a chance to showcase for TV people or movie people. And then 79, Washington, D.C., Garvin's opened up, a paying comedy club. Mm-hmm. And then 80, it exploded. I mean, just clubs were up Cleveland, Detroit, Columbus, Ohio, Comic Strip, Fort Lauderdale, Philadelphia. These clubs started popping up all over. And the first time I think I came down to Houston to work at the Comedy Workshop, I think it was 82. But so there are clubs that were in open that then became brought in like in Chicago, Zines. They started bringing in comics from outside, or Boston from outside, San Francisco, the Punchline. They had all those local comics, and then they started bringing headliners in from outside, paying them guys. And then the road opened. That's when all of a sudden there was a road. You go out 1 week, and you end up going out for 7 weeks. I mean, Bill Hicks and I once in 1982 at the Comedy Workshop in Austin, and this the agent goes, "Look, there's a club just opening up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Or, no, it's Oklahoma City first. Oklahoma City. So why don't you guys go up there and do that club? It just opened up." So Bill was the middle, and I was a headliner. We go up there, and then they say, "Oh, go over to Tulsa next, and then Lubbock, Texas, and then El Paso." And we went out for 1 week. I think we stayed out for like 7. Mm-hmm. Just going break from one new club to the next.
And you didn't necessarily know where you were going from one club to the next ahead of time?
No, not until they called and they go, "Look, here, go to the next club." I mean, the first stand-up tour I ever did was completely accident. I was in Fort Lauderdale Comic Strip in 1980, like January, February. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going out, and this club owner called up the club there, talked to a guy who'd just been up there because he just started bringing comics from America up in Ottawa, Canada. And I went up to Ottawa, Canada, did a week there. At the end of the week, he brings you into the office, he's paying me, say, "Hey, this guy wants to talk to you on the phone." The guy says, "I am from Montreal. I got a new comedy club there. I heard you're great. You did fine in Ottawa. Can you come here like now, right now, this week, and do Montreal?" And at the end of that week, the guy, Mark Breslin from Toronto Yuck Yucks, called me up and said the same thing. "I heard you did great in Montreal and Ottawa. Can you come right this week and come perform at Toronto?" So I went out for 1 week there in 1980, in the winter of 80, and I ended up out for 4 weeks.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And you were doing some headlining up in Canada. That must have been the same. That must be what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was. Look, when I was at Comic Strip in Fort Lauderdale, when Kelly Rogers, a comic who was on the phone with this guy from Ottawa, he brings me over to the phone. He puts the phone to his chest and says, "Whatever he asks, tell him you can do." Mm-hmm. So I do the phone, and I go, "I got this club from Ottawa. Can you do 2 45-minute shows, separate 45-minute shows?" "Oh, yeah, sure." I hang up the phone. I go, "I got a half a minute total. I got like a half hour. If they buy everything I do, I got a half hour total." Kelly says, "Don't worry, you'll fill it in. You'll figure it out."
That was 45 minutes of different material from each other.
Different material. And I had a half hour total. But I went up there and I played around. I did all my best material first, and they liked me, so whatever I did, they would kind of go with, and I just played it. Look, back then, the clubs were so new. Mm-hmm. This comedy thing was so new that the audience was more lenient. They didn't have any expectations. You talked about Comedy Central. It get to a point where people had seen so many specials and so many comics on Comedy Central and every other network and every other cable show that they had expectations of what a comedy show should be. There were no expectations then. So if you weren't funny, as long as you were interesting, as long as you were up there moving around and being interesting, you didn't have to be funny every 30 seconds. You just had to keep moving and be interesting and talk, and you know what I mean? It's just their expectations were to joke every 30 seconds. They weren't there. Mm. It was new.
I heard Jerry Seinfeld when he was talking. There's something on YouTube called Talking Funny with Gervais and Chris Rock and Louis C.K. saying there's no other job where you're judged and rated every 30 seconds like you are with stand-up comedy.
No, It's I think Jerry once said, it's also a job where everybody in the room knows how you're doing at any particular time. And you go up there, I don't care, you can have the greatest intro in the world, and you better be funny in a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
You have all the credit you want in the world, but you better show them you know what you're doing. They want to know you know what you're doing. Give them that first laugh, show them that, and then you can play around, they'll go with you. But yeah, it's pass fail, laugh no laugh.
Right.
They know when a joke doesn't work. When you stop talking for a second, they know there should have been a joke there. If they're not laughing, they know you just bombed the joke. You just slipped the joke.
Yeah, he said the worst thing they do is have the MC introduce you as the funniest man in the world, and then they sit back and go, the crowd sits back and goes, "Oh, really? We'll be the judge of that." He goes, "It's the worst thing anybody had ever did to him." Yeah, that was the kiss of death intro, man. And comics would sometimes do it just to play with each other's heads, This guy coming up now is the funniest guy you'll ever see. Funniest guy in the world. And you just go, "Oh, man, thanks." Yeah. What struck me is, like you said, in the early days when it was just coming, when the comedy was coming up, it seems like these owners or these places would want you, but it seems like the crowds that were in these places weren't necessarily ready for it yet, because you talk about, maybe an old roller disco suddenly became a comedy club, or old 50s, 60s supper club, or a barn has been converted with a stand-up little place to perform, but not necessarily the crowds were necessarily ready to hear. It struck me about the one where you had the radio signals coming in for a baseball game, and the crowd wanted to hear that instead of your stand-up. It was. See, some of these places they'd open up that shouldn't have had a comedy club then, now, or ever. And this place was Perrysburg, Ohio, which they told us we were going to play Toledo. So we thought, because Toledo's not a big enough city anyway, but all right, we'll go to Toledo. But then we get there, it's not actually in Toledo, it's in Perrysburg. It's not actually in Perrysburg, it's in a bar and disco in a cornfield outside of Perrysburg. Cornfield? We're virtually in the country. We're in the country. And they had this dilapidated sound system. I don't know where they got it from, I don't know, ripped it out of the battleship in World War II. I don't know what it was. But first of all, it would shock you. You'd go approach the microphone, and a blue arc will come flying off the mic and hit your finger. So you always get a shock as soon as you grabbed it. And then, for whatever reason, it was picking up AM radio stations. And it was this basketball team, the Toledo Blue Hens, or whatever the name of their college basketball team, the Rockets, or whatever they were. And they would, they'd go, "Hey, he's bringing the ball up the court." And after a while, the crowd would be kind of like, "Let's hear the rest of the game." Yeah. But that was fascinating when you talked about I think you were going down to Washington D.C. and you were performing there. And in the early days, it seems like there was, like in other aspects of life, people have 9-to-5 jobs and in offices and buildings. There's this sort of a sense of loyalty with club owners. Oh, you go to this, do this gig there, you can't come back here, and yeah, there was that part of it. That happened. When clubs started, multiple clubs, when the thing started really rolling in the 80s. So some club is making a ton of money, and the other bar owners can see it. Some comedy club in Atlanta, Punchline, for instance, that kind of stuff was so successful. Mm-hmm. Well, the other club bar owners around town see these guys are packed. They got audiences every night packed, a cover charge. So let me open up a comedy club. So I'll open up a comedy club. So then you start getting competition. Then it's like, well, you work here, you can't work there. That sort of thing happened, yeah. But, loyalty is a two-way thing. You got to pay me more. You want me to stay loyal, you got to pay me more. So it worked out. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But it interests me about how some of the stand-ups would really be supportive of each other, even if when it came to something like, I suspected there was joke stealing, but I didn't realize it was on the level you mentioned in your book. And I also read this in the I'm Dying Up Here, that comedian Gallagher, if anybody remembers Gallagher in this day and age, that he had done some stand-up or something. He told a joke, and Robin Williams was there, and he Williams ended up repeating Gallagher's joke somewhere else, but you put it in a different perspective. Like, it might be that Williams didn't even remember he did that, but he was very generous about it, and that he would go back and tell that comedian or maybe pay for it. And I didn't realize that you could sell each other your jokes if you wanted to.
Oh, people sell jokes all the time. Some people sell jokes that aren't theirs. I mean, that happens. Look, it's a wild profession. Most comics are either better performers or better writers. Mm-hmm. And some people are great performers, but they're not very good writers. So they got to have material, right? I mean, that's the thing about stand-up that drives comics crazy. If you're a singer-songwriter, you write a song, a great song, the audience is like, that's a great song, sing it again. But you can write the greatest joke in the world, the audience hears it and goes, that's a great joke, greatest joke in the world, tell me a new one. They don't say, give me that joke again. You got to have a new one. So comics who aren't great writers, they got to get material, right? Mm-hmm. So you can either buy it, or they can twist a joke, like make a joke that's very similar to the one that you did, or they can flat out steal it. Those are the ways of doing it. I told a story one night I was performing, and the guy was at the end of the week. It was Sunday. I performed with a guy all week for 8 shows, and the last show Sunday night, I had to be listening to the guy. I normally didn't listen to them in the act once I heard their acts and knew what jokes to avoid, so I didn't come too close or duplicate. Mm-hmm. And he's doing my jokes. I mean, he's doing verbatim my jokes. Huh. And I couldn't believe it. And I hadn't heard all of his acts, so I go running backstage. When he came up, I grabbed him before they introduced me. I grabbed him and go, what are you doing? You just stole 5 minutes of my material. And he just literally looked at me and said, I forgot you were here.
I didn't know I was going to get caught.
He was going to steal material. It wasn't a question of what he was going to steal material. The timing was off. He didn't wait long enough. He didn't wait till he was out of town to a new gig. He was still there with me. So I had to go on stage, and there were a couple of jokes I did that he'd already done that I hadn't heard because I wasn't listening the whole time. And, it's tough. It's very difficult.
How do you even recover from that?
You get funny. I found ways that get funny around. I can't remember what I did, but I found ways of joking about the fact that the comic in front of me had stolen my jokes. I had, and the audience doesn't know because they haven't heard his act or my act, but I had to find a way to get around it. And no, it's not what you want to do. It's not fun.
Well, I particularly like that. There's a quote I really made me think is where you said in the book, comedy takes forbidden impulses, holds them to the lights, and in our shared laughter we find relief from our shame. I thought that was really fascinating.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, there's a lot of it. People don't talk about sex, or they don't talk about bodily functions, or they don't talk about prejudices. And then you go into a club and some comic talks about them, and you get relief from it. We are just all human. Mm-hmm. We are imperfect in our humanity. We all make mistakes. Whether it's a simple mistake of like a George Carlin joke where he used to joke about, trip over that crack in the sidewalk, and then he turn around and look as if there was something wrong in the sidewalk. That feeling that feeling like an idiot, you just tripped over a crack in the sidewalk, but then you got to turn and look at the crack as if it's its fault, not your fault for tripping over it. And it's just that little bit of humanity where you go, yeah, we've all done that. We've all done what we don't. Anybody who saw us trip, we don't want to go, oh, I'm not going to act clumsy, idiot. You could look around, turn around and look at the sidewalk like you bad sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. So you don't believe, or do you believe there's anything taboo for comedy? Is everything up for grabs?
No, I think anything's up for grabs. I think that you have to be responsible who gets the pie in the face. Every joke, somebody gets a pie in the face. Everybody's the butt of a joke. There's somebody getting mocked some way in the joke. So you have to be careful if you're doing racial material or edgy material, whatever sort. Like, who are you mocking the stereotype, or are you reinforcing the stereotype?
Mm-hmm. I noticed you did come across some of that in your performance where you saw other comedians handling material that didn't really help the group they were making fun of. They were actually just making fun of people. And
right. They think they're being edgy because they're doing material, and you look at it and go, you've actually just mocked the minority. You didn't mock the stereotype about the minority. Mm-hmm. And, just because it's like not everybody who flies an airplane should fly a MiG jet. Not everybody, just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean you can drive a NASCAR. You know what I mean? like some people should just stay in the safe lane, and you don't have the skills to handle some of that more high-flying material. But everybody wants to get... Today there's more pressure than ever because there's so many comics to get noticed. And so one of the ways to get noticed is be outrageous, right? So outrageous material. So I think there's a more of a attraction to do that kind of material today than in my day. Plus in my day you had to work clean. You had to work clean to get on a Tonight Show, or even Letterman or any of those shows. You had to work clean. And so today you don't have to. You know? There's a different set of standards all the way around.
Well, like you said, Leno and Seinfeld always worked clean, and they're, look where Seinfeld made it to, what the heights he got to, on just on like you said, a show about nothing and clean comedy.
Yeah. I mean, well, look, not everybody has the talent of a Leno or Seinfeld, and I understand it. That if you can't write that kind of material, you don't have that kind of fortitude to stay with the standard and hold to it. Yeah, I get it, but I admire those guys. I think they're two of the best, and they always have been. And but that doesn't mean I don't like guys who work dirty, because I like that too. If it's good, if it's funny, it's good. That's all.
Well, Rich, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to take a few-minute break here, so if you could stand by. You're listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU Network. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
We're back here.
Okay, we're back with comedian Ritch Shydner, and my brother just texted me a question for you. He says, when you were researching for Kicking Through the Ashes, did you fix any old grudges or make any new ones?
You know, there were just a couple of guys who called when they saw me posting the stories on Facebook, and there were two guys in particular who said, look, you know, they had stories, things that happened, and he said, could you do me a favor and not post those, you know, not post those stories, you know? And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's no problem, you know? I won't, you know, because you asked me, I won't, because they were things, they made, you know, big mistakes back then.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody else, you know, I didn't want to hurt anybody, but I also wanted to be truthful about things that happened. So there were just a couple of guys who probably got a little bit burned there, you know, in that time. But I didn't, no old grudges, no new grudges, I don't think. Everybody who's read it from that time likes it, so I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that fascinated me was you were talking about hecklers and some of the ones you've tried to shut down and the ones that kind of helped you out, and then the others that just absolutely destroyed you. And you say, of course, New York City hecklers are brutal. Did you find that heckling was different in different parts of the country, or it's just people are people?
Well, people are people, but you know, when you get into New York City, when I say brutal, they will come at you. They will test you. It's like surely you're going to get tested, and that's okay. I don't mind it, because a lot of times I look at it. That's all you're doing is testing. No problem, man. Let's go. I'll show you. I can bang with you. But I had that one story in there where literally the guys were there, and I found out later. In fact, I found out even after I wrote the story and published the book. A guy came and told me, you know, this is a story about East Lansing, and I was in there, and these guys were shooting pool, and they would not stop shooting pool throughout the show. So that was real trouble, because they're just destroying one joke after another, right? And finally, I was like, you know, you guys gotta stop playing pool, man. And they're like, you know, F you, you know. And so I said, you know, and then I started making fun of them. They had these REO Speedwagon. One guy had an REO Speedwagon T-shirt on. And I was like, oh, man, that's a limp band. That is really a limp band. That's a limp band now. It's going to be a limp band when they bury you in that raggedy T-shirt, you know. And he had it. I guess I snapped him, and he came running. He came up the stage. We got in a fist fight on stage. And I eventually just tossed him off, and the bouncers threw him out. But, like, here's how crazy I was. I just got in a fist fight in front of the whole audience on the stage. My shirt's ripped. My hair's messed up. I turned around, grabbed the mic after he got tossed out, and started doing my act as if I was going to do my act again. And they're like, no, that's not going to happen. And it was insane. And I found out later that these guys were sent in because the person who had the lease on the place, if the comedy club failed, then if they failed to make a payment or something, then he would get the lease back and he'd make a lot of money. So he hired a couple of people, like gave him beers or whatever, money, to go in and mess up the show. He wanted to mess up the show. I found it out later.
Oh, that's like...
Normally, most heckling is fist fight. Most heckling is just testing you, see if you're really in charge. Can you really, you know, are you good? Are you quick-witted? Are you here tonight? Or are you just on automatic pilot?
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you come to play.
Right, yeah, you come to play, man. I came to play.
That's funny, though, that they paid those guys to try to sabotage the thing. That's like that, what's that play, the Mel Brooks movie where they...
Oh, the producers.
The producers.
Yeah.
That's like they did a low-budget version of Producers.
Springtime for Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
Springtime for Rich.
Exactly.
The one thing that I think is kind of sad, because it's an end of an era that the up-and-coming generations behind us will never know, is about what it was like for you comedians and stand-ups. The holy grail for you all was to be on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Yeah, so you can't imagine what it was like now, because there were only 3 networks, 3 channels, basically.
Right.
So at night, at 11:30 at night, after the news is off, there was only Johnny Carson. The other 2 channels were in like old movies or something. The only live entertainment, it was a comedy show on. It was the only show. So everybody was keyed into watching that show. I mean, it was a huge, popular, only late night show. And you had to work clean on it, and you had to basically make the king laugh. It was almost like back to being a jester.
Yeah, I was saying, this seems kind of feudal in a way, doesn't it, with the king and the jesters?
Yeah, there was you had to make Johnny Carson laugh. If Johnny Carson didn't think you were funny, you were out. Like the king and a jester, you were out. So it was very, very important. And you can't imagine it now because, first of all, there's so many different talk shows.
Yes.
They're not that important. There's so many different other venues, other kinds of entertainment. Back then, you forget there was not digital cable. There was no satellite dishes. At 3 a.m, the TVs would just turn off. The TV stations would just put on a test pattern, and there'd be no more broadcast.
Right. Remember it well.
7 a.m. Yeah. So it was just a whole different era, and it was so important for some of us. Some people were like, "Well, I can't work like that, so I'm not going to try it." But I wanted to get on the Tonight Show. My dad was a huge fan of it. All those things that were factors to me.
Well, what we didn't know, the public, is from your perspective, or any comedians that's going there, that there were certain signals that you had to look for to know whether you've made it. And of course, being waved over to sit down was the ultimate. But so he would either tap his pencil if he's like, okay, courtesy, or he would clap, give thumbs up if he liked you, or you could tell whether you were coming back or not, basically, on what he did.
You had 3 signals.
Mm-hmm.
3 signals. One was waving you to the couch. Come on over to the couch. So that was the best.
Mm-hmm.
You did so well to bring you over to talk on the couch. Then you got the other signal, which is Johnny putting his one arm out and doing the circle, with the forefinger and the thumb doing the circle.
Okay,
and
yeah.
The thing was up in the air. Okay, you did okay, which means you come back another time. And then there was the Johnny not looking at you, just taking his pencil and tapping it on his desk. He's an old drummer, so he just if he was not looking at you and just tapping his pencil on his desk, it's like a drum roll for an execution. You were done. That was it.
And did that hurt your chances in anything else?
Oh, my God.
Getting gigs or other spots on other shows? Or
absolutely hurt your chances. Absolutely. Yeah, very bad.
And there's nothing like that anymore. In fact, the more controversial and upsetting you are, that's no such thing as bad press. So,
yeah, if you got that, it was hard. It was hard on your career. Absolutely.
So that was not the same necessarily like David Letterman's show.
No, they all were different. When you did Johnny's show, you come out. Johnny Carson was 30 yards off to the side behind you. When you came out and did the old Letterman show, David was almost on camera. He was almost directly behind you, so the audience is kind of watching him as you perform, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you lost his interest and he starts looking around his desk, you lost the audience because they would notice David wasn't engaged. If David was laughing, the audience laughed more. I mean, they both affected you in the reaction to your performance. I mean, but Johnny was more not out of the line of vision of the audience than David was.
Right. I remember the old setup from on the NBC show.
Yeah.
But I just think it's kind of a shame that people won't ever remember what that was like. That could be career making, career breaking.
Yeah, that was a very special time in TV. I mean, I remember back the 3 channels, and you had to tune in, and there wasn't anything to record. You be there or be square kind of thing. And
yeah. Somebody was coming on these comics today become preloaded with so many more. They've watched so many comics coming up, and they've taped them. There's YouTube videos. There's so much. But back then, if I wanted to see a comic, like you said, there was no recording it. So you wanted to see that comic, you better get on there and at 11:30 at night or whenever he's coming on, you better be in front of the TV to see it.
I remember staying up so I could record certain shows. Stand next to the VCR or push the button. because we didn't know how to pre-record for the longest time.
Well, they're in the 70s. You didn't, 70s. I mean, it wasn't until the late 70s until you had VCRs. But I mean, that was a golden time, with Johnny Carson. And
VCR was as big as a TV too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's equipment like you wouldn't believe. It's like clunk. They got a little more sleek, but I remember now seeing that in some clips where they're showing you straight on, but then they'll do the side view where you can almost see Johnny, what he's doing. It's not every time, but I actually saw clips where he was doing the okay, so I understand.
Well, they called him the Kingmaker. Mm-hmm. And so I can imagine that when he pulled you over and you sat down and he got a chance to talk to you. I mean, I imagine that was like the end all of end all for.
Yeah, there were comics like Stephen Wright's a famous one.
Yes, I was going to ask you if you didn't mind me asking about him. You said he was like the exception that proves the rule. I guess because he was so insanely different.
He was so insanely different. His first show so blew Carson away, the first set he did, and Carson brought him over, and I think he came back like 2 or 3 nights later. Like, that was an insanely quick turnaround for your second shot. Mm-hmm. I think they even just kept him out in L.A. and just said, stay around here for a day or two, we're going to put you back on. And he was rocketed into, like, comic stardom.
Mm-hmm. Actually got to see him. You actually got to see him in Stafford down here in Texas, but I've never seen anybody else like him since. But so I was thinking that must have been the exception that proved the rule.
He was brilliant, and he was so funny, and Carson just was blown away by the guy.
The only person that really handled him well, as far as Wright being the guest, was Craig Ferguson, who's no longer doing the Late Late Show. But those clips on YouTube with them together is that's good stuff. He actually knew how to handle Stephen Wright, made Stephen Wright laugh. So another thing from your book that I did not realize, because I didn't know a lot about Rodney Dangerfield, but how late in his life he came to fame. Like, he didn't start young and get out there. He started into Hollywood about the time we saw him. So.
Well, no, he actually started as a young comic. His dad was a vaudeville comic, not a very successful comic, club comic later. And then Rodney, when he was a young guy, he went up as Jack Roy, and you could see pictures of him as a young guy. And he wasn't very successful. Then he had a couple of kids, and he wasn't going to be able to support them doing that. So he started doing aluminum siding sales. Mm-hmm. Right? So he did aluminum siding sales. And then he came back after the kids were grown. He came back later in life, obviously in his 40s, late 40s or whatever, in the 60s when he came back. And, it fit. It worked. He kind of looked like a worn-out guy. Don't get no respect. Actually, it was funny when he said it. And he got it. And what you have to do is you come back late in life like that. I think it's like Lewis Black made it late. He was like the Rodney Dangerfield of this generation. You have to attract the younger generation. And Rodney sort of was like, for us, my generation, he was sort of like the parody of the American dream, that our parents all believed in the American dream, that anything was possible, anybody could become successful, and Rodney was like the parody of that. I'm a loser, nobody respects me. So he was funny to us. He sort of like mocked that American dream the way I think Lewis Black, when he's sort of like ranting and raving about water bottles or whatever, sort of represents my generation to their kids. Like, he's almost like a parody of my generation's barking poodles, that we are, impotent raging against nothing. And the kids find him very funny that way. I mean, he's a very brilliant comic, and he's very funny, and he writes great stuff, but you have to attract a younger audience.
Yeah. Well, Rodney was more like downtrodden everyman, and Lewis Black is just angry.
Yeah, right, but it's impotent raging. Mm-hmm. Rodney was, it was all inward, but yeah, it's funny. It's funny stuff.
But he, what you mentioned that, Rodney's famous tagline, getting no respect, but he seemed to show, in your book, you said he seemed to show a great deal of respect to other comedians, especially in regards to other people's jokes.
Yeah, there was a time I was emceeing about 1981 at the Improv in New York, and Pat Buckles was the manager, and she called me over and said, Rodney's on the phone, he wants to talk to you, and I get on the phone, and Rodney says, I got this joke. This guy sold me a bunch of jokes, and one of the jokes is just so much better than the other ones. I just suspect that it's not his joke. It's just too good. The other jokes are crap, and this is a good joke. And he tells me the joke, and I think the joke was, I was going to kill myself. I was going to get down to the ocean and drown myself. I knew I wasn't serious. I brought a towel. And I immediately recognized the joke as owned by Ronnie Shakes, who was a great one-line comedian back in that time in New York. And I told Rodney, I said, that's Ronnie Shakes' joke. He said, Beck, give me his number. So we give him his number, and he calls up Ronnie, and he said, look, this guy told me this joke. It's obviously yours. I found out it's yours. I won't do it anymore, but I'm doing the Tonight Show coming up. I normally pay $50 a joke. I really like to use this joke. I'll give you $250, if you let me use it. And Ronnie Shakes is a huge Rodney fan. He said, no, take it. And then Rodney called Ronnie back and said, listen, I'm going out to L.A., got an extra ticket, first class ticket. You want to come with me? So he took Ronnie Shakes out with him in L.A. when he did the Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. That's totally cool move. Because most big name comics like that, they wouldn't search to find out where the joke came, whose joke it was. They would just say, look, the guy sold me a joke. I'll buy the joke. It's a great joke. I'll use the joke.
See, that's like, I don't know of any other aspect where you can just buy something off someone like that. Like, oh, you created this and you made it. I'll buy it. Now it's mine to do with what I,
Oh, yeah, people do. Yeah, there's no, that's probably the easiest fencing method for jokes. That's like the easiest way. Somebody sells a joke and you go, it's mine now. Like I said, guys sell jokes that aren't theirs all the time. People do that. And some people who are unscrupulous won't even ask any questions, even though they may suspect that it's a stolen joke. There's no serial number on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tracking device. It's just words. They can't be copyrighted. It's just words.
And there's, like you mentioned, there's no school to go to. There's no tutorial on how to be a stand-up or tell jokes or write jokes. You've got to just do it or not.
No, there's now. There are comedy classes now. There are all sorts of books on how to do it. But, when you're funny, nobody told me how to write a joke. I just kind of knew how to do it. Mm-hmm. I've studied it. I've been watching comedies and stand-ups, and I just kind of knew how to make people laugh. So I kind of, without even being told, I knew how to form a joke. And when I wrote my first jokes, I just knew. You just know the form,
It's funny, and what makes people laugh, or you've got to, quickly readjust if you've got a room what if you got a room and you've got your best stuff and it's just going right over them? Do you have to readjust, or do you just plow through?
I used to say, set the mower low and cut the grass. You have to find the level of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's places I won't go. If the level of the room is, they want racist material, then they're not going to get it from me. But within a range of what I can do, if it's not a high-flying audience, then we'll fly low.
Wow. Another thing that impressed me is you once got a phone call, or maybe you got more than one, from Phyllis Diller. I just loved her.
Yes, so did I.
She was awesome.
I did my third Tonight Show in '86, and Phyllis called me up and said, I love it. I love what you do about the men-women thing. I'm doing Roseanne, I think, more than I'm doing. But the point was that we became friends. And in fact, part of the reason this book was written is she wanted me to write a book on the history of stand-up comedy. We used to talk about the history of stand-up comedy all the time. And then Cliff Nesscock came out with a book called The Comedians, which I thought was going to be totally about the history of stand-up, but it was more a general history of all sorts of comedy. And I just sort of got sidetracked into doing a book about the 80s, the history of the 80s comedy and the experience of stand-up comedy. But Phyllis was a hilarious woman, a pioneer. I mean, she was the first female star stand-up. She broke that glass ceiling, whatever you want to call it. But she broke the glass microphone, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. I love it when she talked about her husband Fang, and she calls him.
Oh,
Fang.
yeah. She was brilliant.
That must have just been, I'm trying to imagine what you were feeling and thinking when you first got that phone call from her. Because she's like the legend.
Yeah, I thought somebody was goofing on me. I thought, yeah, right, Phyllis Dillard. This is Phyllis Dillard. And then she did that laugh. All right, well, that's a good impression. It's me. It's Phyllis Dillard. Okay. All right. It was.
That's really cool. See, I wish there's a certain era of comedy I miss. And one of those things, I don't know if you remember this. You must remember this. You're our age, I believe. Do you remember a show on TV called Make Me Laugh?
Oh, yes, of course. Those comics became stars.
Mm-hmm.
Those comics, when the comedy clubs first opened in the early 80s, in the Midwest, that show was syndicated. It was a big hit show. And all those comics, Dick Dunlap and Gary Shandling and Bruce Baum and all those comics, Mike Binder, all those comics came out. They were very popular in the clubs because people knew them from Make Me Laugh. Oh, yeah.
I was really young, but I really enjoyed that show and just having people not laugh and trying to make them laugh. And of course, the longer they didn't laugh, I think the more money they were winning by the minute or, by the second. I missed that, and I missed the original Gong Show. I don't like the new version of the Gong Show. They have called, the American, It's Got Talent. It's missing the gong. So...
it's missing the gong, yeah. That gong put a good edge to it, didn't it?
Yes.
Something about it. Somebody was so bad they would gong them off. Was very rude, but very effective.
Just satisfying, and you can't do that in our touchy-feely
the
political...
Unknown Comic.
Man.
That was a classic.
Who was the lady with the dark hair? She was always back there hitting the gong, female comedian. I can't think of her name, but she was there all the time. She was my favorite. I can't think of her name. But
J.P. Morgan.
It might have been J.P. Morgan, because that's like the only thing she did was be on the Gong Show, I think, far as I can tell. And then there's Chuck Barris always looking drunk. I mean, it was just perfect. And when they have the guy come out with that music, just doing that dance, and it was just, we just don't have an absurdity like this anymore.
Yeah, it was goofy. It was crazy goofy, no doubt about it. They get very serious now, and they're married out. It's me. It's like, I don't know if you remember this show. There was an old show in the 50s. And as a kid, I'd stay home sick once in a while. I'd watch it. It was called Queen for a Day. And they'd have somebody come and tell a sob story. And whoever told the worst sob story amongst these women housewives, they'd get like for their troubles, they get a new washer dryer or something. Well, America's Got Talent has that aspect. They like to have kind of those sad stories or those touchy-feely stories,
Yeah. Gene the Dance Machine. That's right, Bob. That's what it was. My favorite.
Gene Dance Machine. That was, it was great.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing, was a couple of things I want to ask you about is you did know what we call the outlaw comics, Sam Kinison and Bill Hicks. And during one of our breaks, you mentioned we were talking about Bill Hicks, how he was probably one of those more emotional guys, but he had a big following in England. They just loved him in England.
He went over there and they got him huge, and I think it really helped his confidence, and he was really swinging. He was a guy that stuck with his sense. He didn't mind walking people if they didn't get what he was doing. He didn't care, and it took him a long time. I said, he had to whittle down an audience to find a following, and that was important. And he was one of those guys. The Outlaws, it's funny, because obviously I think they got the name from Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, who had the Outlaw comedy album. I mean, not comedy album, the Outlaw music album in 1975. They were outlaw country musicians. So they became sort of, in Houston, the Outlaws. And Sam took the name, and he had his Outlaw Comics in L.A. Bill was no longer interested in being in part of a group, but there's an unofficial group of those guys. There was the Comedy Workshop, and it was Riley Barber and Andy Huggins, Steve Epstein. There were a lot of comics who were at the time, and they had a good camaraderie. They had a good, they felt like they were doing something. Look, we all felt in these little scenes, whether it was in Washington, D.C. or Houston or Philly, that we were something underground and special and weird because there were no comedy clubs around. And nobody was doing it. And all of a sudden we'd find some little bar and we'd take it over and start doing comedy there, and people would find us. So we all felt a little bit like on the outside and weird. And you know, used to tell people I'm a stand-up comic. They go, what? I never met a stand-up comic before. Now if you go to a party, you say you're a stand-up comic, they go, yeah, I'm a stand-up comic. My cousin used to do it. Everybody does it.
Right. And that's another thing. This is a profession that, you know, as you hear this all the time. You probably mentioned it's like nobody goes up to the surgeon and says, oh, can you do some surgery for me? You know, you get asked, oh, tell us a joke. And I'm like, well, it's not, you know, it's not like that. It's not like I tell a joke like two guys walk into a bar necessarily. You're just talking about life, and it's not a thing where you perform on the spot. People just don't seem to understand that.
No, they don't, because everybody knows a joke, and they want you to just tell them a joke. So sometimes they ask that, you know, if you just tell them a joke, they get kind of like, well, you just told me a joke. What do you want me to do? Set it up, like, you know, put down a table here, get yourself a drink, I'll charge you a cover, and I'll come in, I'll start doing, you know, an act before you. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where people, nobody thinks that they can just go on stage and play guitar like Eric Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but everybody looks at a comic and goes, I can just go up there and tell a joke. Everybody's told a joke. So there's that kind of little, until you get up there and face those eyes. When you see those eyes and expectation on you, then it's a whole different thing.
And you better have that confidence, too, because like you said, if you're sort of shivering and look weak, seems like they would destroy you or heckle you. If like you don't have confidence yourself, get off the stage.
They know. Like Rodney used to say, individually, it may be orangutans. There's a group of genius.
Yes.
And they do. They know.
The collective intelligence.
Exactly. Collective intelligence.
What fascinated me about you is not only can the audience, of course, makes or break, but it's not just that, it's the ambience. It's also like you said, it's the lighting, the sound system, if there are any other distractions, and you like, what's the perfect, you describe the perfect atmosphere and room setup for stand-up comedy. And I thought, I never thought about that. You know, of course you don't want people playing pool, but, you know, and talking, but there's other factors that really set the tone.
Absolutely. And I think of all of them, if you say like the big three, people go like a stage, a microphone, and lighting. Like, if I had to say you only get one of the three, I'd take the lighting.
Really? Yeah.
You can't perform in the dark. You can't be just a voice bellowing out of the dark with a good sound system. I can yell loud enough for everybody to hear me. I need to be seen. I don't need to be elevated above everybody. It's nice to be seen a little better, be put up on a little bit more of a perch, so to speak. But I need to be seen. So of all the three, I think the lighting to me is the most important.
And but hopefully you're not being shocked or tasered by the microphone. That would be ideal. But
that's nice.
Like you said, it's better to be lit and then the audience is in the dark, which is kind of an interesting metaphor. The audience being in the dark, you know. But now I'm getting a sign from my husband here, Spaceboy, that we need to take a break, and we won't keep you much longer. I don't know if I mentioned how much we should keep you.
As a matter of fact, I do have to go because I go over to the Improv and do a show.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and take a break.
Well, hold on. If he has to leave, let's go ahead and plug.
That's what I was going to do.
Let's go ahead and wrap it up, and then we can go ahead and take our break.
Make sure we plug all his wares. I mean, to go ahead and tell me where where you're performing, and if your book, we know that's on Amazon and anywhere else you're selling it, and.
Yeah, Kicking Through the Ashes, my life as a stand-up in the 1980s comedy explosion and comedy boom. I don't even know what the title is anymore. But it's Amazon.com. Ritch Shydner, RITCHSHYDNER. Same for my website, RitchShydner.com. And Kicking Through the Ashes on Amazon. In Kindle, hard copy. That's it. That's all I really want to plug. I thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a blast. Thank you.
Good luck with your gig tonight, and I'm glad you're out there still performing and chasing the laughter.
Yes, I am chasing it.
Okay, well, if you do another book, come back and see us. We appreciate you so much.
I will. Thank you.
Good night, Ritch.
Night.
Good night. Bye.
All right, and the show isn't over, and I don't know why you're putting your headphones down. And I guess what we'll do is we'll roll into break. You are listening to SpaceboyUniverse.com on the SBU network. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
How about that? The Surlana Hour went well, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I actually read his book, and I would have done so even if we had not had him on to the show, because I do remember him from back in the day, and I'm sort of a stand-up comedy enthusiast. I don't see as much of it as I used to in the 90s, let's say, like on TV, but...
Well, you definitely like comedy. I mean, not to say that I don't like to laugh or whatever and watch comedy. I think, for me, modern comedy is not much like when I was a kid, and how Rich was describing, 70s, was much different. You had people like Richard Pryor, you had, just different comedians during that time. I was in tune with game shows like Match Game.
Yeah, I used to watch that, along with the
Gene
Gong
Rayburn
Show.
and Charles Nelson Riley. One of my favorites, Paul Lynde, during late 60s, early 70s. I'll take Paul Lynde for the block. So stuff like that, those...
Hollywood Squares,
comedians going on those shows. So, comedy was much different then than it is now.
It evolves. And he said in his book, the audience for stand-up comedy never ages. They're always in their 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. But the comedian ages.
Right.
So I don't know if the comedian has to keep up with the audience, or they can just tell them what it's like to get old. Here's what you expect, I was glad to be able to read that. And I was telling him, there's another book I read about 2-3 years ago. In fact, it was the last actual physical book I bought before I got an e-reader and stopped buying physical books. Mm-hmm. It's called I'm Dying Up Here, and there's no way I could spell or pronounce this guy's name who wrote it, but it's William, and I'm going to say Nadelsater, but it's written crazy. It's like Knoe, But you can find that easily on Amazon. Just put it, I'm Dying Up Here. But that one goes into deeper detail, and it goes really into the history of Mitzi Shore's Comedy Store and into, I think, the Improv out there in California. But it talks about in the 70s when the first wave of comedians started coming to Los Angeles and performing stand-up, and the early days of Leno and Letterman before, when they just met, way before they got, before Letterman got his show, and they were all friends. They played basketball together.
So, and I wished I could have asked him about, Rich, that is, about the friendships, like a family in that situation. So that leaves me to ask you the following question. And I think I might know the answer to this, but who are some of your top favorite comedic people that you use?
Well, I enjoy Rich, of course.
Nice.
All time, Stephen Wright just appeals to my sense of absurd. And, I mean, people have quoted him into the ground the same way they would quote George Carlin into the ground.
Right.
I think, Carlin's got some good stuff, too. I haven't seen a lot of his. There's a lot of things I enjoy about Patton Oswalt's stand-up.
Yeah.
Because he can take things to extremes. It's like you find something funny about one topic, and then you'll just drive it into the ground to wring it of all its humor.
Like the KFC Bowls,
yeah. Now people request that like it's one of his greatest hits on a music album.
Well, another person that's like that is Jim Gaffigan, is it?
Gaffigan?
Yeah, Gaffigan.
Yeah, he's more
the Hot Pockets.
PG. Yeah, the Hot Pockets. The first time I heard his Hot Pocket bit, I was hurting. I was just hurting. But like I told you the other night, was it Thanksgiving night, we were talking about Patton Oswalt when he talked about, everybody talks about Bob Ross, the painter, and how hippie chill he was, but he went on this crazy thing about William Alexander, the German painter that would come on after Bob Ross, and the almighty fan brush, and he went off on that, and that had me crying, because I remember that because there was nothing else on. You had to learn about painting or go outside and play. That was the two options. So, contemporary, I find myself watching a lot of clips of comedians on talk shows where they're sitting down, not necessarily performing. Like lately, Bill Burr doing commentary about the election.
I love Bill Burr.
And occasionally Louis C.K. I mean, there's a lot of times when they get into the politics stuff and they get their opinion out there, I'm like, yeah, well, I don't agree with that. But when they're talking about observational humor, relationship humor, kids, marriage, family, even though I don't have these experiences when CK was talking about smoking pot that was too strong because he didn't realize modern pot was, been worked on,
Right.
Trying to drive high and not realizing he hadn't been paying attention out the front of the window for 20 minutes. I do like some of the blue collar. I've always liked Foxworthy, but Foxworthy talks about your fun-loving, touchy-feely rednecks, lovable scamps. It's not the rednecks that we necessarily grew up with that gave it the bad connotation. He's talking about, he says rednecks are a glorious absence of sophistication. That's basically a redneck. So that could be anybody in any country. You could be a redneck with a glorious absence of sophistication. And again, Foxworthy made Craig Ferguson like tear up. And that's like his most, I think that's Foxworthy's most appreciative audience was Craig Ferguson. I miss Craig Ferguson, can you tell, on the Late Late Show? I haven't watched the new guy at all.
Craig he was enjoyable to watch. And
I think he just had enough of the Hollywood crap and false, I think he just had enough of the falseness of everything.
Yeah.
Just he couldn't stay in that any longer. I guess he felt like he was killing his soul or something. But I was telling people in chat, it's a few years old now, but there is a segment of the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson where he would read his emails, and then he just brought Robin Williams out, and they just sat down and read emails, and it was like probably the funniest thing had seen Robin do in a little while.
Right.
Not that Robin wasn't funny, but it just hadn't seen him do something like that in a while.
Right.
So on spur on the moment, and Ritch mentions Robin in his book where he talks about how he just sort of came alive as he was coming through the audience. A lot of these clubs, you had to walk through the audience to get to the stage. So he would walk through the audience and touch people on the shoulder and play with them. And, but there was a crazy thing where he talks about some comedians will go through this momentary crisis where suddenly they don't know what's funny anymore. It's like, I don't know if they just have this, if it's the same as having writer's block. There's tons of things I could have kept asking him, because I'm just curious, because performing stand-up is not like anything I've ever witnessed. If you're a singer or a dancer, the moves and they don't change because you're doing a certain performance, but if the crowd's not reacting to your material, you've got to come up with something spur of the moment. And, if you're going to see a musician, pretty much what they're going to play or what type of genre of music, and you'll probably enjoy something. But
so by you going to see some of these artists live, how does that impact you?
We saw Stephen Wright.
Right.
I was like, oh, man, he's right there. And he did all the jokes I've heard before.
We've also saw Joe McHale.
I don't remember anything about that.
We did see
Craig Ferguson.
We did see, didn't we see Brian Regan?
We saw Brian Regan, and he was, I don't know if it was just because I was in the moment. I laughed so hard. I think I stopped breathing, and then I got scared because I couldn't breathe.
Now, the funny thing is, speaking of, going to these shows, is that I think, it's bizarre when I go to watch something live. It's hard for me to be in the moment because I'm so busy. Like, what are they doing there? How are they doing this? I'm really kind of
Stop analyzing and listen.
I'm really analyzing, but when it came to Brian Regan,
because you're a performer too, I guess.
I think with him, I did really enjoy laughing, and because I've seen him going way back in the early days, and
I think it's because he gets a little physical, like he'll mime a lot of his act. And I remember what it was. It was like, I guess I was ready to laugh. He talked about, what is that weird phantom hair that's just growing out of your face? It's not really there, but you can feel it. And I guess it was the way he was talking about it and miming it. I lost it. I could not breathe. I didn't feel any air coming into my nostrils.
He is truly the hardest working comedian out there. That
he hasn't stopped.
I mean, he's just everywhere. I mean, and he's not like well known to everybody, but it's not like he's not. I mean, I'm sure he's appreciated by the comedic community.
Well, you get your factions like Regan and Gaffigan that are. You can take the family to see, and then you have some people like Patton and CK that, you probably should be 18
Bill
or
Burr.
over, but so I can appreciate both. And then some of them are going to say stuff I do not agree with. Mostly it's politics and stuff, and then like Louis CK will say things strictly for shock value, and he knows it's funny. Because people don't say that. You just shouldn't say that. And they talked about that when, like if you go on YouTube and put in Talking Funny, it's just a round table conversation between Ricky Gervais, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and Louis C.K. And they actually, there's one point where they crack each other up so bad they're crying. So that's kind of fun to watch. And the recent Bill Burr commentary on the election on Conan O'Brien, that was really good, but it's like cut up into different clips and how he's talking about Canada is not your place. He's not going to solve all your problems moving to Canada, and because they get their own problems up there, and all that was really funny. And I used to sit there and watch stand up all day long, because back when Comedy Central. They used to be Comedy Channel, and they rebranded Comedy Central.
They had comics, after another. It was like actually going to a club. You could watch.
Just like 2-minute clips, 2 to 5 minute clips, stand-ups.
Well, you would say
all day long.
They were like the MTV.
Before MTV
changed its format.
Stopped playing music videos.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would, I'd be there and I'd just watch that. And I think that must have come from an overburdened, like he was saying, there was so much stand-up comedy. They had lots of footage of it, and everybody was doing it. But in the early days, there was, from his book, that seems like there was competition. Like, oh, well, you went and performed over there. Well, now you're dead to this owner, but I can take your spot that you were here. So, too bad, so sad, And he talked about briefly. I'll keep mentioning Bill Hicks. Well, Bill Hicks came out of the South here. He was born in, I think, Georgia, and then his family moved to Arkansas. But he came to Houston to I don't think it's here anymore, the Comedy Workshop, and I believe he performed as early as 16 years old. Yeah. So that's kind of the significance of Houston's role in stand-up comedy in the 80s. And Sam Kinison, he talks about seeing Sam Kinison for the first time, how he would just get up there and scream at people because that's something nobody had did before. And he was a preacher, a legitimate preacher, and he rebelled and, renounced all that, but he used all that tone and cadence and rhythm and yelling, the hellfire and brimstone type of preaching. He brought that to his stand-up act. And I think Hicks was like front row when they first saw that, if I'm remembering that right. It's definitely check out Rich's book. It's great info for the big early days. He talks about people you'll know. What fascinated me is he didn't get into it, but his first wife was Carol Leifer, which I didn't know. And he talks about how women were coming up through stand-up and turning like gender stereotypes on their heads, that all the things men were saying about women that were kind of derogatory in their stand-up, they were coming back and hitting it harder. And that was fascinating. I think that would be, for me, I might go research that on my own, women in stand-up comedy. I don't know if that could be a show. I don't know where I would go with that, but I think that's just something, my own personal research I might go look into, because I find that fascinating.
Did
that answer your question?
I believe, I guess it did. For me, I don't really, I like George Carlin. Lewis Black is another one I like.
I did like Lewis Black for a while. He got really political. But,
going back, I did like Rodney Dangerfield in the 80s. Like I said, during the 70s, there was all sorts of great comedic, people out there that, it was just a magical time because anything went as far as jokes went. And, like Rich was talking about the stereotypes and everything. I mean, nobody got their feelings hurt back then. Nobody left hurt. And as far as, comedy, because they all laughed it up, especially when they did,
got it.
Like when they did the roast back then, comedy roast.
Well, you went in knowing what to expect.
Exactly. But
that's not to say comics don't have jokes.
Right.
Jokes with a setup, a premise, and that have a punchline. That's not to say that it's all a part of a bit. Bill Hicks had a joke that I remember to this day. Now, I don't remember it verbatim. It was basically, he was talking about Adam and Eve, where Adam said, "Gosh, Eve, can you believe this? This is paradise, and we'll live forever, and everything we ever have or ever want, all our needs will be taken care of, and we can live in harmony for the rest of our lives." And she says, "Yeah, it's not enough, is it?" Just remembered that forever and ever and ever.
Well, like
that's a joke,
Like one of my favorites from Rodney Dangerfield was, because he was great with the one-liners, and I love one-liner jokes. He said, "Last week my house was on fire, and my wife told the kids, 'Be quiet, you'll wake up Daddy.'"
Yeah, he had a lot of good ones like that. Yeah.
Another one that I love is the one he's in the movie Back to School. He says, well, it's not really a one-liner. Well, I guess he's doing a commercial because he's, I guess, a tailor for big people. And he says, "If you want to look thin, hang out with big people." So, yeah.
I remember that one.
Pretty funny stuff that he, one-liners. And I think there was one show he did where his son was actually in the movie. And I can't remember which one it was, but... Rodney Dangerfield, Back to School, one of my favorites, the Triple Lindy. Let's see how many people can remember that one. And funny stuff. And then George Carlin, I mean, he had a way to just, explain things to you that was funny.
Basics, yeah.
Funny, but it was like, okay, I made you think, for a second or two.
I think a lot of modern comics, all their observational comics, owe a lot to Carlin. But I remember, what was I going to say?
Something thought-provoking and interesting?
Well, I keep going back to Stephen Wright, I know.
Right.
But he's
interesting, I will say.
A thinking person's comic, because, I know a lot of our listeners are into science and sci-fi and, things like UFOs and what like that, but the funniest thing, he says, one time I was going to a job interview and the guy said to me, was asking me questions, and after a while he noticed I wasn't paying attention, and he says, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, so I closed my book and I looked up at him and I said, 'Look, if you were in a vehicle and it was traveling at the speed of light and you turn your headlights on, would they do anything?' And the guy says, 'I don't know.' He goes, 'Well, then I don't want to work for you.'" That sold me. I don't want to sit here and quote other stuff, but
one of his classic jokes.
Yeah, there's something about seeing the guys in person if they've got new material, Otherwise, it's like going to see a musician's greatest hits. Like, I really enjoyed it. I knew I would because I enjoyed it the first time I heard it, but, I was kind of really hoping for something new.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what CK was talking about. He goes, what he found out how to do is he would take his strongest bit, his bit that he would end his shows with, and start with it. That way he kind of just screwed himself right from the first, and it challenged him to try to get better and above that. So that's another one. I like to listen to comedians talk about the business of being funny, or the business of what's funny and joke writing. So even though I'm not that amusing myself, or I don't do that profession myself,
you do these great imitations and personalities that when I asked you to do them again, and you said never.
Yeah, I'll do them. I'll do them when you least expect it, when we're alone, and then you go, "Can you do that again?" I went, "Nope, I don't do requests." So
at some point, I would hope that you would do a one-off during the show unexpectedly, and
well, you won't let me drink during the show. If you'll let me have some Baileys, who knows what'll happen?
That's Pandora's box. You know that.
What about on let's say the 24th? Can I have some alcohol on the 24th of next month?
I guess so, during the show, if that's what you want to do.
It's not like we'll have a guest or anything.
Well,
it's Christmas Eve, and it's not like anybody will be listening.
Oh, would you? Well, we're going to be live anyway. I mean, it's we'll pull the proverbial George Norrie, being here like on the day before a holiday or whatever, or we were live on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this has just been.
See, you really want to bring it back to this point where, happy holidays, everyone.
Sort of an implied F word.
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving.
It's not been a great 24 hours for us. Sorry. We won't drag you into that. But,
it hasn't been.
Just killed it right there, didn't we?
2016 has not been good. Period.
Yes.
So we want to hear you call in with your crappy 2016 stories and how you can't wait to give old 2016 a big FU, and I mean that in the biggest way possible. So
I liked John Panette. He's passed away.
Oh yeah, he was.
But he made me laugh. And yeah, Kevin Meaney, I don't know what happened to Kevin Meaney. He had, again, a mental breakdown or something. Trying to think who else I liked.
Well, you can keep thinking about that, Surlana, because it is at the top of the hour. And
we can do breaks?
We can do a break and come back, and hopefully somebody calls in. I know somebody
Call in after we come back.
Yeah, call in after we come back. Don't call during the break, because we will not answer the phone until we're back from break. So, hey, what channel are we on?
We're on a channel?
I mean, what network are we on?
SBU network.
Don't you forget it. And this is Spaceboy Universe, and you're listening on spaceboyuniverse.com, so don't go away.
are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
We're back from outer space. So, where do we go from here, Surlana?
Calling and crap on 2016.
Sounds like a good topic.
There we go. That's me just slamming my phone down. Yeah, 713-701-5214. Tell us how much you're looking forward to this year being over. Was your year crummy in a non-political way? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because
let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Our year was crummy for non-political reasons, personal stuff.
So,
and yesterday didn't help. So, which we discussed in chat, and do we talk about that or?
Well, why don't we talk about something until somebody actually calls in?
And I'm watching.
And I apologize. I'm not up to my usual self tonight.
It's because something went on.
And I'm sorry if you tuned in for an awesome show.
It was awesome till.
Well, yeah.
Right this second.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me down, Surlana.
Well, no, I'm there with you. I'm there with you. Somebody said 2016 sucked economically. Yes, it did. We did 3.5 months where it was just awful. Now, until we met K28 in person, then it got a little better.
And then, yes, Catalina, I can agree with you on that one. I don't don't like to do the politics on air, but with the Trump and Hillary screaming back at each other all year long,
that was enough. That was so much enough.
Couldn't escape that. I mean, anywhere you turn, left or right, and
holidays are just. We're talking about you and I. Holidays are just depressing. The older you get, for some reason.
I mean, shall we discuss our year? I mean, earlier this year, I lost my job, and it sucked. I was out of work for 3 months, and trying to keep the universe alive, the dream that I have of doing this, and we
very
came
close to disaster.
There was a handful of people that did reach out and help us. And
because we knew if we went on hiatus, what if we don't come back?
Yeah, what if we don't come back?
We lose our momentum, lose our listeners.
So we, as British people do, keep a stiff upper lip and carry on. And so we did on that. And
sorry, it's my straw.
And so holidays. We went to Denny's for Thanksgiving.
And that was a disaster.
That was a disaster, I guess. I mean, not compared to other things.
What I found laughable, because I know you're such a fan of cranberry.
Yes, and I still haven't gotten any decent cranberry.
Is they gave you, basically, it's, when out there when you get cough syrup and it comes with that little measuring cup on top of the cap, and you're supposed to measure your cough syrup into that cap. That was the size of the container of the cranberry sauce they gave him.
And it was subpar cranberry. It wasn't
wasn't even canned cranberry.
Because you say canned cranberry, but Ocean Spray is the best cranberry that's in a can. That when you open it up and you just go clunk clunk clunk, and it goes.
And it comes out in the can shape.
It comes out in the can shape, and then you kind of just knock that over the sides, and you just cut little circular patterns for your cranberry needs, and that is definitely the cranberry rod to go. Now, the other day, since we were talking about cranberry at the special SBU/SBM Thanksgiving special we did on Thursday, I was like jazzing, and we started talking about Boston Market, right? Well, I had
started talking about Boston Market.
Well, I referred to both of us talking about it, me talking to you and whatever.
The food's good. It tastes good. It's just, it goes cold in under 1 minute.
I went there and had meatloaf, because I love meatloaf, and I got some dressing, and I was all jazzed to get their cranberry, because they are more, their cranberry has nuts and it's just,
and spider eggs and wheat grain and.
I don't want to make it sound bad. It's actually halfway decent. It has a nice flavor to it, a nice consistency to it. I mean, it's not like the Jell-O thing that you pop out of a can and, go from there. But so I get up to the cash register and they say, well, we don't have the small serving ones. And I said, well, how much is a big one? And they kind of convinced me, well, you don't want that, sir. It's just too big to handle. I'm thinking, at this point, I think I can handle it. Give me the gallon size, whatever you have, and I'll pay for it.
It's money. Take it.
Yeah, take my money, as Fry would say.
Shut up and take my money.
So, but I didn't have any cranberry. And then to top it off, I go to pour me a drink at the fountain machine, right? And I get spritz because they didn't put the dang nozzles on their Coke machine. So I'm like, I'm trying to stay positive. I've got meatloaf at least. I got meatloaf. So there you go. You
Sorry,
can talk. I'm like choking over here, and she's like rubbing her straw all over her face.
Well, I'm hot. My face feels like it's burning red hot, and my straw is nice and cold because it's a stainless steel straw.
That's what I like to do when I have an injury or whatever. Hey, John, how did you get that sports injury? You should try a cold straw.
I have a stainless steel tumbler with water in it, and the straw, when you pull it out, it's cold too because it retains the coolness. And I just put it against my face because it felt good. It feels like my face is on fire.
And speaking of other holiday things, not on my end, but I know somebody else has. How many people out there have had a veggie weenie or a veggie hot dog, as K28 had for Thanksgiving at some point? I'd never heard of. He said, "What did he say? Sauerkraut or sauerkraut potatoes?"
I quit listening after veggie weenie.
He has such a unique diet.
I can't believe he made me say that.
What? So anyway, so that was the food thing. I think at some point I'm going to search out for more turkey and more stuffing, and we're going to have, Surlana makes this delicious chicken stuffing with cheese thing that...
Let me clarify that. I don't make it per se. I get chicken, cheese, and box stuffing, and I just do the stuffing according to the box decorate.
What it is a layer of stuffing on the bottom, and then she slaps some chicken on top of that. And then she puts like Swiss cheese on top of the chicken. Actually,
stuffing goes on top.
Oh, it does?
I put a layer of thin sliced chicken on the bottom.
Right.
Stuffing according to directions, and the melted butter goes on top of that. And then the cheese on top of... No, it's chicken, cheese, stuffing. Or it probably should be chicken, stuffing, cheese, but it doesn't matter. It's all good. And it has to be a white sliced cheese like provolone or something.
Oh, really? You stopped using...
Swiss.
Well, yeah, I was going to say...
Swiss or provolone.
I like it when you use the Swiss because the Swiss is
tasty. I know. Let me tell you, this man takes two things very seriously. His cheese and his pepper. He once put a note on our refrigerator because we had this little dry erase marker board on the fridge, a really small one. That was our previous fridge, not our current fridge. But he couldn't remember the cheese that he liked, so he wrote himself a little note. It's like... It's baby that I like, not imported Swiss. So he's writing himself notes about cheese.
Yeah, to remind me that
himself.
Don't touch the imported cheese because that's not the kind you want.
Yeah, so he's writing himself cheese notes so he won't forget. And then I open my spice, where I keep the spices cabinet. There's whole kernel corn black pepper. There's fine powder black pepper. There's coarse black pepper, and then there's the regular black pepper you shake out on your table.
There's pepper for all occasions. It depends on what you're eating.
But here's the thing: the peppercorn that you have in the shaker, we don't have a grinder for it. So it's just sitting there in these big chunks. What are you going to do with that?
I don't know. At some point,
are you just going to beat it with a hammer?
Well, if I need to,
pour it into a Ziploc and beat it.
Pull out my pepper aggression onto it. Yes, I'll beat it if I need to. But I like pepper. I can't get enough pepper. I can't explain why I love pepper on things. But,
I do too.
But, the fine pepper, I'll put that in my egg drop soup or, on other things.
I do like cracked pepper. I like going to the deli at our grocery store and getting the cracked pepper turkey in thin deli slices.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. The pepper talk, so...
You still call in and crap on 2016 if you'd like to. 713-701-5214, or tell us your favorite stuffing recipe. What creative things do you do with turkey the next 2 days after Thanksgiving? That's not right, Kay.
Well, that's what I was talking about. He had veggie hot dog, sauerkraut, and sauerkraut mashed potatoes. I've never heard of sauerkraut and mashed potatoes.
Oh, remember we used to get the Hickory Farm stuff? I mean, we used to actually go out and get it ourselves.
Well, that's something we haven't done in a long time. We used to do dinner instead of having a regular dinner. We had like crackers and cheese and meat.
We'd have I would call it loose meat night. Mm-hmm. It sounded kind of tawdry, didn't it? Mm-hmm. But we would get the different deli cheeses from our grocery store. We'd have them slice it up for us, not stuff right off the rack and pre-shrunk. We'd have them slice it up for us in front of us, and then we get our choice of crackers and chips and dips and cheeses. And
it's loose meat night, and we are going to have some cheese and crackers. So sit back and enjoy.
How did this become sexual?
I mean, that's the way you were, loose meat night, and so, let's kick it into full drive here, if I can get it to the...
Where did you get that song? You just have that ready in case there's a tawdry moment?
It's loose meat night, and boy, let me tell you, we have Hickory Farm. When you want loose meat night, it's got to be the Hickory Farm, that is. And don't forget your Swiss and your cheeses. That's always important, because if it's not baby, it's not going to be on my cracker. Anyway, so, yeah, loose meat night. Good. Deliciousness.
I'm rather stunned by what just happened.
Drive-by meat throwing night, I guess, is there.
Just shout out to that song that was Fireflies by Spaceboy.
Yeah, so, but, yeah, you could tell that we enjoy... what it is that we're halfway through making our dinner arrangements for the next week. We plan it out, and then we go pick it up. And so Leanne's got this icon of a face going, oh. So...
like she's shocked by anything we do.
So...
who do you think taught us how to do all that stuff? Sexual cheesing. Sexual cheesing.
That was the name of the original Marvin Gaye song.
Sexual cheesing. Where you get that feeling? Okay, now on hashtag sexual cheesing. I'm sorry. I'm gonna tweet something right now.
Okay, so she's chatting out that. Thanks, Leanne. You hit that one on the nail. So, but we're making our plans for...
Hey. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we have a caller.
A caller, okay. Caller, you're on the air.
I want to request some Barry White.
We only have one song, it's Sexual Cheesing.
You guys sound like you needed somebody to call in.
Well,
thank you,
Patrick. We are so happy. First off, let me say, we love you to death, and we are blessed to have you a part of our life and know you. And I'm just responding to your email that you put out there. So, thank you for being a part of us, with us, and all that good stuff. And two, we're still waiting for our homework for when you appear on the 10th of December. So, we're looking forward to that. And three, we watched The Arrival.
Yes.
On Thursday.
Yes. Arrival was a very interesting film. As I forewarned all of you, that it's not the Sigourney Weaver type of alien type film. It's a very cerebral, and we'll talk about that.
It was very refreshing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. It may be nominated for Best Picture. They said it's that good. I've been reading threads on it. A lot of people are very high on the fact that this was a film that no one thought could be made into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was one of those movies, and like I said, we won't talk about it. We'll wait for your show to talk about it, but it was one of those shows that at the end, when we were leaving, it was like Surlana and I were very quiet, and I had to make sure she was okay.
No, I was processing it.
Yeah,
I was thinking, okay, so if she said this, and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Because I was trying to figure things out, and there was some clues left, and I picked up on them, and all like, oh, okay, now I get it. All right.
So yeah, definitely a good movie, and we can't wait to talk to you about it on December 10th.
And by then, you will have had time, everyone, to go see it, and we won't be spoiling it for you.
it's hard to believe that it's already the holidays. I mean, I was on your show back in early June. It just doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, it has gone back. We have this board with all the guests that we've gone
since
through
August 6th.
Since August 6th, and I can't believe everything that we've gone through and who we've interviewed and who's been on the show and in doing the remote thing at the Houston Mini Maker Fair. And, I mean, it's been exciting. And, of course, it's going to be great to have you back on in December, kind of like, because it feels like forever since we've talked to you. But yeah.
I'm all for getting this year over with. It's not good.
You guys went through a rough patch, but you held on, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
and I'm sure your Space Cadet's glad you did as well.
Yes, indeed. And I'm going to add retro. What is it? Retro Mercury. Tongue-tied now.
He's trying not to say.
Yes, thank you.
He's trying not to say metrosexual retrograde.
Yeah,
that's what he's trying not to say.
Yeah, that's coming upon us in December. It starts about mid-December and will run through most of the New Year and Christmas and all that good stuff. So it should be interesting times. We'll chat about that too on December 10th.
Cool.
But I wanted to mention that I saw a movie the other day. I don't know if you saw the email I sent out to you about it, called Frequency.
Yes.
We did.
Now, I've heard you guys talk about frequencies, and Solaris Blue Raven has talked about frequencies on her show as well. But have you seen the film?
If it's the one with, is it Dennis Quaid in it? Not Dennis.
It's not Gene.
No.
Not that one, original?
No, that was Frequency.
Oh, okay,
back in 01. No, this one is about stuff you've talked about on your show. That's why you want to watch. And if you guys could watch it before the December 10th show, that would give us something else to discuss.
Homework. I think I have seen it. I'm not sure. I'll have to.
Where did you watch it at, Patrick?
I caught it on cable by accident.
Oh.
It's on Netflix as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was on one of the I don't know. I was channel surfing the other day, and I saw the title, and I said, Frequencies. What is this? I said, I've heard Spaceboy and Surlana and Solaris talk about frequencies. Well, let me tell you what. I was so impressed. It's an independent film, and it's out of England. And it's really, really well done. And believe me, I was smiling the whole time I was watching it because it's things that I've discussed on your show, and it's things you guys have discussed. I know, Spaceboy, you're big on frequencies, right?
Oh, yes, most definitely, yeah. We did a whole show on frequencies.
Right. And Solaris Blue Raven talked about it on her show a couple of times. I've heard her mention it. So it's the kind of movie that you two would really like, Solana. I think you would really enjoy it, too. I really do.
Okay. Well, I wrote it down so I won't forget. Maybe we can find it tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's Frequencies, and it's from 2013, 2014. You can look it up on IMDb and find out. But it is on Netflix, as I just checked the other day, and I saw that it's on there as well. So I would recommend it to your Space Cadets, too. It's a really well-done sci-fi, but it's really well put together and well written, and it's definitely one of those films when it ends, like Arrival, that'll make you really think about stuff. So, but anyway, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I enjoyed Ritch Shydner. I think he knows a friend of mine who's a comedian. I started to call in.
He probably does.
Yeah. His name is Mike Wilson. He's done stand-up for years and years and years, and his brother and I were entertainers together at one time, too. So, but anyway, you guys have a good evening, a good show, and I'm looking forward to David Bowie next week on the 3rd, right? Was that 3rd December you mentioned?
Yes, 3rd of December.
Hopefully people will call in and, they can make up for my lack of knowing any Bowie things.
Maybe we can all be heroes for at least
just
one day.
Just for one day.
and hopefully a lot of your Space Cadets will tune into the conversation we're going to have on December 10th.
Most definitely, and we're excited to have you back, Patrick. And like I said, we love having you on the show, and plus off the air, we enjoy getting your emails and just interacting with you, and you always give us a positive vibe that is always great, and we appreciate it.
I can't wait.
Well, remember, frequencies and Mozart. Mozart helps you manifest. Remember that.
Okay.
Mozart.
We will remember that.
You guys take care.
Thanks.
Bye, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Bye.
Let's see. Okay. Second caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, it's the Godfather.
Thank God he didn't call after midnight.
Well, we got to have sleep. But I made a mistake. I thought you guys were going to have Ritch Shydner, the comedian, on, because he was kind of a local boy that I really didn't get to know, but I've seen him around. But I wish your Ritch would have stayed on because...
Well, he had a gig to get to.
What was that?
He had a gig to get to. He was going to actually do some stand-up tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that I was waiting it out, figuring you were going to take calls later with him because he wrote a book, but I actually lived through some of that. I was around those guys when they were starting out in the San Francisco comedy scene on Clement Street, and then later we did other venues. I tried, this was right after college, and a roommate of mine said, hey, they have an open mic at this place called the Holy City Zoo on Clement Street in San Francisco. We ought to go because we were always kidding around, you know. And then he didn't want to do it. He wanted to go to graduate school. So after we did a couple of shows, I just said, well, I'll try it. It was fun. I didn't have a job because I was just out of college and there were no jobs back in the 70s originally. So I would hang around that scene, and some of those guys became famous, like my man Robin, you know. And I would have liked to discuss some stuff. He might have asked me something he didn't know already. But
well, maybe he'll come back if he does again. Definitely check out his book though, because it's an easy read. It's fun read. He now what we didn't discuss was what he puts in the book is Rich had. You know, like he said, you got to. They want to keep that high, that performing high they get when they were on stage, so they would continue to get high. Literally, with cocaine was the drug of choice with alcohol.
Yes, it was.
He actually he performed at Dangerfields, and that's Rodney's club. And Rodney said, "Oh, I only liked your stand up. Come back here with me, and we'll do some blow or something like that." So he goes, "Doing cocaine with Rodney Dangerfield was the whole reason I got into stand up comedy."
No, unfortunately, there was a lot of culture there. I've never been a drinker or a big drugger, other than psychedelics briefly in the day. And what happened was that a lot of those guys, I would go in, and of course smoking was allowed, and I didn't smoke either. And I didn't know what I was doing there, except you could go up for free and either get laughed at or take some abuse, you know. And I wasn't one for abuse, so I thought I better be funny. So, all those guys were doing it, and they would hang out there all the time. You know, sometimes they would get free drinks if they did. But they go, "Oh, you want a free drink?" No, I didn't drink. and that was the scene there. And then, of course, it was more than just pot, and there were some guys, I'm sure, doing speed back then. But definitely the coke started to come into it. I never got it. I saw this white powder one time, and some girl gave it to me, and it kind of smelled like aspirin to me. I didn't see what the big deal was. I guess I didn't take enough, but then I never tried it again. So you know, it was a scene that I didn't stick around. Maybe I wasn't talented enough. Who knows? If they had been non-smoking bars back then, and if drinking wasn't such a big issue, I mean, maybe I might have hung around, because you learned a skill. You know, you either were funny or you weren't. And I kind of learned how to write jokes by listening to the timing of the other amateurs around me. And of course, when I was 19, I took a workshop with an improv group called The Committee. And The Committee, a lot of those people, the men and the women, they would do these little skits. It was a good place to take your date in San Francisco. You go down to Broadway, and I think the show was like, you know, $1 or something. And you'd go in, and they'd serve a little, I don't think they had a liquor license at first, but you could have a little cheese plate or something. And you'd watch them do these funny acts. And this was before Saturday Night Live, you know. And I could see when Saturday Night Live came out, I go, oh, that's what they were doing back at, North Beach there in San Francisco at the Committee. So they had a thing called the Wing of the Committee, where they would do more experimental stuff. And they announced that at the end of the show, if anybody wants to take an improv comedy workshop It's $1 on Saturdays. And so that's when I started going, and that's where I originally met Robin Williams. You know, he was just this hairy little guy, and and he was just shy. He had long hair, and and he was very, very nervous. But when we'd start doing this tag team stuff, the guy would just explode, as we all learned later. I mean, the guy cut into me a couple of times. I was like in the middle of doing something, and boom, he got an idea, and he went with it. And then 5 minutes later, you kind of understood why he went with it, but it was hard to keep up with, you know.
The only person I saw go toe to toe with Robin in improv was Whose Line Is It Anyway, where Drew Carey hosted, and that was Colin Mockery. Colin Mockery still outperformed everybody. He's one of my favorites, Colin.
Yeah, well, these people that were in the committee, one of them is a bald-headed guy named Dan Barrows. He had kind of a sad sack look. They had a lot of character parts in a lot of Hollywood films in the 70s and even into the 80s. You know, I guess that it was this, now that I look back upon it, the committee and the wing of the committee were probably the same thing they were doing in Chicago with Second City. It was the same type of a deal. Some of these guys were drama students. Some of them were just, you know, one guy was a biker. He would drive his Harley there. And that biker guy, you know, I think was there to meet women. And you know who that was? That was Howard Hessman, you know. And, and years later, he was just this long-haired guy with another hippie guy, you know. And but that was Howard Hessman, and he was part of that committee for a while. And the crazy stuff that went on. And there were a couple of guys you wouldn't know that didn't quite make it, but they were, you know, famous around the Bay Area. Bob Sarlott, part of that. Will Durst does political comedy.
Yeah, I remember him.
He's still around. He's pretty big locally. He does shows, and he's definitely liberal. And but you know, he does kind of heartfelt stuff. And his wife Debbie Durst has her own comedy career. And these were all people I started off with, but a lot of them wanted to hang around and drink after the show, and I didn't want to. I didn't drink. And I already had my college degree. You know, I was looking for a job. You know, some of these guys, one guy, I remember a guy who's dead now, John Cantu, never made it big, but he went into joke writing afterward. And he said, he came up to me in 1975, and he said, you know, they're about getting ready. They might start paying us to do this. And I went, yeah, right. Because it was like open mic nights, and the Holy City Zoo was Monday night, if you can imagine, worst night to do anything. No one's out except maybe college students. And then he, you know, they'd say, well, you've got 5 minutes, you know, and all the comedians, about 20 of us would show up there on Monday night, and we had to break for the main act. You know what the main act was at the Holy City Zoo originally?
What was it?
It was a belly dancer, and she got tipped.
I was just getting ready to say, was the belly dancer?
She was a hot-looking belly dancer, and she got tips that they'd stuff into her. We didn't get anything except maybe a free drink, and I didn't drink.
Well, so first off, I don't want to imagine you in a mid-riff kind of belly dancing outfit, you know.
Well, I won't say anything, but I never belly danced, but there was one night in my neighborhood that one of the local bars said, coming in December, Tuesday night will be ladies' night. And I psyched it out. I went up to the woman who was managing. I go, you're going to have male strippers. And she said, yeah, want to be one?
Oh, Lord.
True story. But, you know, that was quite a scene, though. I mean, it really, I would have never dreamed that people would become as big as Robin did, or Dana Carvey came a little bit after I was doing it. But, you know, it made a way for a lot of people, and it was a time when, you know, I even went to a couple of bars myself and told the owner, hey, look, if you let me come on Friday night and use your back room, it'll bring more drinks in. And they would let me do it at this one place called the Chelsea Pub. And then I found out later, I went by one Friday to do it, and the whole place was torn up, and it was closed. There were broken mirrors and windows. And I went up to the owner. It was an Arab guy named Abdul. I go, what happened? He goes, oh, nothing, fine. We'll be open again tomorrow. And I found out years later that this suitcase he had with him all the time, he was dealing coke, and some rival Arab guys came in, and they had a saloon fight. I mean, San Francisco still was the Wild West, even in the 70s. You know, there was a lot of Carol Doda. I met Carol Doda, you know, the famous person who made topless dancing big, you know, and North Beach and the Haight-Ashbury and North Beach were still kind of wild areas. And if you went to San Francisco State University, all kinds of characters. As you might recall, sad ending, Jane Dornacker, beautiful 6-foot-tall model, got into comedy and unfortunately later got into trafficology and crashed 2 times in a helicopter reporting traffic. The second time it took her out in New York. But I knew all these people. You know, they were all, you know, the rents were cheap in the Haight-Ashbury, and you know, you didn't have to pay to go into a bar for live entertainment, and there was sometimes free food, and you know, you could live kind of a bohemian lifestyle either before or after college, and so you could get in, you could experiment. Oh, do I want to be a painter? Do I want to get into drama, acting, comedy, or of course the famous Bay Area sound of music?
Well, that's
so, I mean, that was what birthed the comedy scene.
Well, it definitely San Francisco ranks up there as far as an attraction for a lot of these things. But Dino, we've hit the bottom of the hour. You know, is there any last comments you want to give our audience, or?
Well, I just want to tell you that comedy kills some, but we still have Mort Saul. You might remember him. That guy's got to be 80-something years old, and he still does a Tuesday night act at a local club here in the Bay Area, if you can believe it.
Well, that's
so
awesome.
comedy can either kill you or make you live longer than your years. Have a good night, you guys, and cheer up. You're young. You'll have many more tragedies and joys. Good night.
Thanks, Dino.
Thank you, Dino.
We'll talk to you soon. All right. Well, it's the bottom of the hour, and so shall we take our break, Surlana?
Yeah, what hasn't Dino done? That's what I was thinking.
I know. It's like it's always he's called in with something new, but we'll talk more on the flip side of this musical break. So you're listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU Network. That's SBUnetwork.com. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
Wow, talk about perfect timing. That is the song called Cat 5, and it is based upon my love of a show that will have one more season on AMC called Halt and Catch Fire. It is the show that I keep begging Surlana to watch and check out, because it's a halfway decent show.
Well, let's wait till it's, over.
So you're going to binge watch it after the next season?
I can't. You know me and my attention span. I'll go through two things, and if I don't like it, I'm back to reading a book.
Then how is it that you became so enamored of Breaking Bad?
Wasn't enamored of it. I was just fascinated. Once I learned what the premise was, and I was like reading comments, across the internet and reviews and.
So basically,
I thought I'll just
pressure.
watch. Usually, this is what I'll do. To give a show a chance, I'll watch at least the first 3 to 4 episodes, and if I'm not interested by 3 to 4 episodes, it doesn't get a chance with me. And I think by the 6th one, I didn't even realize what I was doing. And I told you about it, and you said, "Stop! I want to come back and watch it with you." So that's what we did.
Yeah, because it's not.
But
often
it hadn't finished yet. It was still airing on AMC.
Yeah, because it's not often you do get into a show, and I was like, man, this is a great show, and I'd like to experience it with you, even though I'd pretty much seen a big chunk of it thus far.
You'd seen everything with the last
But it was
season.
great to just kind of like rewind and go back to the beginning with you, and then watch
But that's
it.
a show I would not be able to go back and rewatch. It's just too much.
Really?
It's too much, even though you know what's going to happen, which makes Better Call Saul an interesting trip, because you know what's going to at least...
Because every time you see a certain character, you go, oh, it's sad that...
You know what's going to happen to Mike, you know what's going to happen to Saul, but they do introduce some new characters that you have no idea about. Now
Like,
you're invested.
You're
invested in them, like, did they leave town, or did they,
Well, I think what's interesting about Better Call Saul is that we're going to be transported back to Nebraska. And
well, it goes back and forth.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, I'm sorry, I shouldn't hold that card up.
And you shouldn't hold it up so close to that open flame of that candle. That's another thing that's giving me the jitters.
There, it's out. Anyway, so, Breaking Bad, great show. I was glad that we could watch that together. I understand that you're not much on the TV thing, and you are more the bookend thing.
Books can just give so much more.
I don't know. I guess it's just I've grown up like what is it that I'm trying to think of the character from the Glass Menagerie, and that's funny that I'm quoting a play now. The brother would always escape to the theater because he just wanted to get away from his mother and his sister or whatever, and couldn't stand life in general. So he escaped through going to the movies.
Is that Tennessee Williams play?
I believe so. Don't get me wrong. I probably will be, and it'll be all funny again. But so the Glass Menagerie. I think his character's name is Jim, of all things. And he goes to escape to the theater, watches the movies and stuff. I like watching movies. I grew up... I'm trying to think of my first movie. I think the first movie I ever saw, and I kid you not, was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
With
Gene Wilder.
Yay!
See, it takes a little time, but I can manage to remember that it's not Hackman, that it's Wilder. So, and then, so you go from there, depending on whatever. So, it is what it is.
I think it's interesting you remember that. I don't know if that was like the first film. I couldn't clearly tell you what I remember seeing as the first. But I remember seeing that movie and being really emotionally damaged by that tunnel scene.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, I couldn't watch that tunnel scene, even when I was old enough for it not to bother me. And I finally got to a point where I watched it and I went, oh, that goes on in my head every night now. But someone in chat is talking about how genres have exploded with certain genres and books have exploded. And they're talking about the romance novel, and I was telling her, there's something out there for everybody, and I don't want to riff on a certain type of book because there's somebody out there who probably loves it. I don't get certain things, but when I started reading, and I was reading some romance novel, you had your basic contemporary and historical. Now it's just blossomed into this craziness I've never thought. It's really paranormal. You know what's hot right now? Paranormal shape-shifting men who are lumberjacks that turn into werebears. I am not freaking joking.
What?
I am not freaking joking. And every now and then, okay, that's fine and good. It's a story, whatever. Everybody to each their own. Where I have to call bullcrap is on the cover art.
Okay.
The artwork they use to sell the book. Even though this is e-reading, this is Kindle, this is downloaded, most still have hunks, the cheese.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about. The Fabio shirtless hunky guy. Some of them don't. Some of them, when you self-publish, unless you're doing clip art, and let me tell you, I have seen the same basic standard historical clip art. When I say clip art, stock photography, over and over and over and over. But these some of these things I just don't get that are, oh gosh. Then there's the ones that are obvious.
Bo Hunks, as it's being described in chat.
Well, there's these ones that are obviously silly about male on male human, male dinosaur, gay interspecies romance.
Okay.
Now those are written for funny.
That's
to be funny.
Really specific there, Surlana.
But the ones that I keep saying is now I'm typing in a certain thing, but it'll still show me things that I didn't want to see in my filter. Mm-hmm. And one of them is Ice Planet Barbarians. Holy crap! There's a lot of them. It's part of a never-ending saga. One of them is called, I kid you not, they're getting very bold with their titles for these romance novels. Not So Little Green Men, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not kidding. But I do occasionally, I'll see one of these cover arts and it'll have a pun like that or something. And I just take you know how you can take a snapshot with your iPhone, you just click. And of course, the first thing I do is I send it in a private message to Leanne because why should I be suffering alone?
I'm sure that
messes up her day.
World.
Yeah, so that's always fun. And
Dennis is saying Sasquatch romance is big right now.
In Canada, that would make sense. Yeah. What's some of those other things I've seen?
What does that mean? Well, in Canada, that just makes
they're just more squatchy up there, I think. It's just it's
squatchy.
It's just more. I think they've got more land for Sasquatch to be in. There's more forest up there. I think there's better environment for them to be in. Like if I just bring up my book browser, I have a Kindle app on my iPhone, and inside the Kindle app, you can bring up the book browser, and it will show you the latest in any genre, and it'll bring it up. And I was just trying to find some examples. Of course, it's not showing me the crazy stuff. I don't know where the crazy stuff is. How do I normally get to it? Anyway, you have to go to the romance, and it just comes up. Because romance, basic romance, then you have romantic comedy, you have historical, you have sports romance, you have medical romance, you have, it goes down and down and down and down and down.
What was it, those Danielle Steele novels?
I've never read a Danielle Steele novel.
Or maybe I'm thinking of something different.
Well,
but it's the paperbacks. Anyway, they've always been really popular in the past. But now we're at a point where you can just subcategory.
Self-publish.
Self-publish, you know. You can, but I'm saying subcategories within subcategories. Nothing is too extreme.
Well, what's that thing that came out and they made it as a book? And it was fan fiction, and it came a book, and it became a stupid movie.
You talking about The Martian?
No, this was stupid.
Okay,
that was good. That was good.
Sometimes I question you
50 Shades of Grey.
Okay,
that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since that came out and got real popular, there's been a lot of knockoff, books in that genre.
Right.
And that's another one that's hot. Really alpha male billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires that are after their sexy, curvy, innocent little, employee. And I'm just like, oh, God, it's just, there's a whole world that you have not explored. I'm trying to find one of these crazy ones, but of course, it's not giving me any of the crazy
I'm
ones.
sure the audience can trust your
Tempted by the Bear. All right, sure. Called by the Bear. I mean, and that's bear's mate or mated to the bear. Oh God, there's
It sounds like
it's not just it's like bears and wolves. And I'm trying to think what's the most ridiculous animal that they shapeshifted to.
Okay.
But alien ice pirates. Having the alien ice pirates baby, like how do they sit here and come up with these uber specific romance genres?
Okay, picture if you will a fishbowl, right?
Dragons. Changing into dragons.
A fishbowl, if you will, and they write all these different animals on pieces of paper. And
you
put
think
it
that's
in
how they do it?
Fishbowl, and then they just pull out, the exotic adventures of swordfish with koalas. I mean, there you go. It writes itself right there.
Yeah, dragons, shape-shifting into dragons. But it's a romance, and a lot of this, like I said, when 50 Shades of Grey came out, all these alpha male, suddenly being a jerk is sexy. I don't get that at all. I would tend to avoid that. And then just, I don't get it. And so what I'll do is I'll just give it one of these.
You've been waiting all night to do that, huh?
That is a comedy rubber chicken that I bought in my mother's honor because she'd always wanted one, so I got one in her name. So it's
okay.
Get you one for those.
All right. Where do we move beyond the erotic books into something else?
I wasn't talking about erotic books. It's just about books.
Well, I mean, if a bear goes into the woods with a book, is it? Oh, Lord. Thank God nobody can see any of this. Oh, my goodness. We were talking about food earlier.
Okay, go back to food. But it was sexual cheesing, but...
Yeah, it was that. But you were asking where were we and, what topic can we go off onto next?
Get away from this quickly?
Yes, exactly. Because a bear does many things in the woods. So, yes, thank you very much, Surlana. And, oh, Lord. Thank God there's only 10 minutes left in this book.
Yeah. 10 minutes left to call and complain about how rotten this year was.
So, we could start doing house cleaning and keeping or whatever, Surlana. Where do you want to start on that?
Well, we've pretty much talked about what's coming up.
Mm-hmm. On the 3rd, we have David Bowie, The Life and Times of the Thin White Duke, as they've called him.
I don't have my homework assignment on that yet.
Yeah, and then, of course, speaking of homework assignments, Patrick Sporer will be with us on the 10th of December.
He was on our first call there, in case you didn't know. That was Patrick Sporer.
We have a placeholder for our 17th show, but we are going to work on getting a guest, and we don't want to spoil it. Just other than just know that it's.
We had somebody interested, but you just don't know if the timing is right for this person.
One way or another, if that person or this other person, one way I think we'll have a guest on the 17th.
And whatever it will be all Texas.
Mm-hmm. On the 24th, we'll have a show. It'll be Topic Roulette. And
we'll be here even if you're not.
Yeah, so I mean, but you know the beautiful thing about that, Surlana, is they can take that show on the go. So when they get their new iPhones and their new iPads, they can download the show via iTunes and
listen before you lose your AirPods with your new iPhone.
Yeah, listen to it on their new spangled new, brand new. Whatever devices that can play.
Ronald wants 2 more hours.
2 more hours tonight. I mean,
we could do it on the 24th.
Yeah, the 24th. The
stay here as long as we want.
Yeah, but that's thank goodness we have the long Spreaker playing package. Abilities now. Yeah, we're
not limited.
We're officially a network on Spreaker. So, and that's courtesy of SBUnetwork.com. So. And then, of course, the last day of the month of December, we have our prediction show, and we'll talk about what we predicted at the beginning of the year, see how those predictions panned out, and we'll make some predictions, and we'll have you call in the Space Cadets, and you can throw down a prediction for the coming year of 2017, and that will be great. So
I know one prediction that was right on the money.
Well, don't talk.
Save
it until that show, so we have something to talk about that show. And so, what?
Because if we talk about it now, we have no topics.
Yeah, it's just that one thing we won't have a topic to talk about. But so that's that. Let's see what else we have here. And as always, being a part of the SBU network, it's more than just Spaceboy Universe that we do here on the network, and that's Spaceboy Music. On Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And, of course, our good friend Reverend John Polk does his show called The Quantum Hologram Matrix on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, we're just packing them in, and she's smiling over there again.
I'm just wondering where James Cruz found such a perfect animated GIF for sexual cheesing.
I can only imagine he has quite a few interesting gifts that he could pick from. Surlana, did you find another chicken purse? Because that's what K28 predicted.
No, not unless they make one that looks really different from the 2 I have. Unless I'm buying them as backups. Mm-hmm. You've taught me that if you find something you really love, buy another one just to have as backup.
Yeah,
in case something happens to it.
If it's unique and you love it to death,
pair of shoes, a purse.
Don't put it off. Get it. I mean, when you get that gut instinct, and what's funny is that we watch well, you don't watch it as much as I do now, as American Pickers. Is that
I
when
watch it occasionally.
When you come across something you're picking, and it's unique and you haven't seen many of them, the time to buy is now, and so that's how we buy now. Speaking of buying, and I wanted to talk about this during banter, but are you surprised by seeing the videos of all the nuts out there for the Black Friday shopping?
Why won't they just learn? First of all, the sales are a scam. They're making up that money somehow on the back end. Why do you need to be physically hurt or physically hurt another human being for material objects when we have the internet?
And you can just go online and
Cyber
order.
Monday.
In fact, if it's on Walmart, you can go to Walmart.com. We prefer Amazon.com personally. But there's many portals on the internet. You can do your shopping in your underwear, and you don't even have to worry about being clobbered for a toaster. Shop smart. And, don't be a dummy and get involved in all that shenanigans with people trying to get a TV or whatever. This is the time of the year I hate the most when I see those videos that society has broken down. I think a good friend of the show posted on my wall one of the things, I guess he showed the picture of the people trying to battle it out for, I guess, a TV or something. And in the quote, it said, just think if it was for food.
Yeah, what if this were food and we were short on supply? Would these people be like that?
Mm-hmm. So anyway, but I want the Space Cadets to be safe out there, and I don't want you to get caught up in that madness, and rise above it and think smart and shop smart, and if you have to go into a Walmart situation, try to go during
it's over now.
Non-sell. Is it ever over? For Pete's sake, it's craziness out there. It's the time of the year, people. So be safe. That's all I'm asking is just be safe out there when you're shopping, because there are predators out there and they will take you down.
I tell them it's the truth. It's been a bad year. The economy tanked. It sucks. You don't have money to buy anybody anything, and they should just be grateful for your having you in their life. That's what I tell them. I also don't tell them where we live either.
Well, Surlana, on that magical note, are you ready to get out of here?
Yeah, I got some books I want to show you.
Okay, awesome. So until next time, boys and girls, we'll be right here on the Spaceboy Universe Network, and we'll see you next week.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Surlana. Executive producer is Surlana. Social media producer is Dennis Koch. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Mark S, and Bob N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.